subscribe, like the video, and, if possible, join Patreon. But if you don't have much money, you can support the channel by watching the novels on euroaudiobooks.com. Remember that you can participate in the polls so that your favorite novel gets published for free.
Sinasuk is the vice captain of the current 4th team, and also the brother of Yamada Hanadaru. In the 4th team, the level of medical Shendu is second only to Uno Hanaretsu. He raised his head, looked at Aizen calmly, and said slowly, "The pills I left, please trouble Captain Aizen to take them on time and in the right amount. It will take another month at most before you can participate in rescue missions." Aizen looked at Yamada Sinasuk with an apologetic face and said softly, "I'm sorry for your inconvenience, Vice Captain Sinasuk. No need, it's what we should do." Yamada Sinasuk has a cold personality and has no intention of communicating with Aizen at all. After completing the task Uno Hanaretsu gave him, he got up and was ready to leave. Just at this moment, a figure came face to face from outside the door. "Good afternoon, Vice Captain Sinasuk." Kayaraku Shunsui greeted with a smile, looking unscrupulous. "How is Captain Aizen's physical condition?" Yamada Sinasuk replied without any face. "You can find out by yourself, and I will go back to the 4th team to recount the mission details." Kayaraku Shunsui nodded without being annoyed and walked straight into the room. "Captain Aizen, long time no see." Aizen has a calm and friendly smile on his face, as if he and Kayaraku Shunsui have a very good personal relationship. "You don't need to look outside like this, leader of the Jing band. We just tasted sake in the 8th team a few days ago." Kayaraku Shunsui sat cross-legged beside Aizen and slightly restrained his smile. "Old man Shan asked me to ask you about the details of the battle that day. Is there anything to be aware of about that vasto lord?" At this time, Yamada Sinasuk, who walked to the corridor, also heard the sound from the room. "You mean Shendu?" Chapter 60, The Hypocritical Soul Society, The Unkillable Ajuchas. Is that vasto lord's name Shendu? Kayaraku Shunsui was thoughtful, sitting cross-legged next to Aizen in a more relaxed posture. He looked like he was chatting with an old friend, without any airs. As the most popular captain in Shinigami, Aizen is very popular, even among the captains. He who often enters the tavern has also become good friends with these drunkards. Yes, Aizen lowered his eyes and seemed to be a bit disappointed. He calls himself the king of Hueco Mundo and controls the entire Hueco Mundo. It's a pity that my strength is not enough, and I was defeated in his hands. He seems to be berating himself for not being able to defeat the enemy. Kayaraku Shunsui stroked his stubbled chin and asked thoughtfully, "King of Hueco Mundo, then does he have any notable characteristics in terms of fighting?" Aizen raised his head and smiled slightly. "Generally, the main attack method is flame. But in fact, Shendu's melee power is also extremely terrifying. Even the heroes guarding the Lingling Gate are far inferior. Shinigami has 4 Shinigami gates, which separate Shinigami and Rukongai, making them 2 completely different worlds. And those who guard these Lingling gates are heroes selected from the Soul Society, just like Yiguan Saka Danfon. Although it is not a Shinigami, it has a strange power that surpasses a Shinigami. Is it so outrageous?" Kayaraku Shunsui fell into deep thought and seemed to be thinking about whether the death in the 4060 room had something to do with Shendu. "By the way, I forgot to tell you." He suddenly smiled and said, "Central 46 is all dead. They perished in the flames, and none survived." When he said this, he didn't feel sad at all, but smiled quite happily. "That's it." Aizen looked down. "That's really a pity. After fighting me, Shendu was not injured at all. As for whether he has the ability to hide himself, then I don't know. Under the premise of having the Lingbo Measurement Research Department, it would be very troublesome for Minos Grande to enter the Soul Society, let alone enter the interior of the Shinigami. But now, Room 46 was directly engulfed by the fire without anyone noticing, and it was forcibly attributed to Shendu, which seemed a bit outrageous. "It's enough." Kayaraku Shunsui put on his hat again. "Those rotten guys don't care about these details. As long as there is a possibility that Shendu is the murderer, that's enough. 46 rooms symbolize the rights and interests of nobles only, and those nobles will be satisfied with this answer. As for what methods they will use to punish the murderer, that is not within the scope of his job title, Kaiaraka Shunsui. If they are really whimsical and launch the power of the Soul Society to conquer Hueco Mundo, Old Man Shan will use Raijin Jaka to tell them the answer. The high-end combat power of Soul Society may be stronger than that of Hueco Mundo, but the low-end combat power is not on the same level at all. If you really let the ordinary Shinigami soldiers go to conquer Hueco Mundo, Cero and the others hundreds of years ago are a good proof. Looking at the back of Kairaku, Shunsui going away, the smile on Aizen's face became wider, as if he was watching his best friend leave. However, if someone is by his side, he will hear subtle words that are completely different from a smile. Real. It's surprising. Hueco Mundo. Void Night Palace. The night is still dark, and the crescent moon hangs high in the sky, swaying in Hueco Mundo with endless whiteness. The unchanging color tone is the essence of Hueco Mundo. Standing in front of the Shuya Palace, which is under rapid construction, Shendu looked down at Sailaporo's design. Due to the problem of the main color of Hueco Mundo, he still chose a simple and huge architectural structure. The huge white wall is like a continuous mountain peak, completely surrounding Shuya Palace, a castle comparable to a city. Countless simple and practical buildings stand in it, outlining the main outline of a city. The current Shuya Palace is still shrouded in darkness. The sky cover, a creation that imitates the sky in this world, is not a conceptual item for the time being. If Shendu remembers correctly, the thing was built by Aizen himself, most likely with the help of Hijayaka too. It is not an easy task to build a sky big enough to cover a city. Even if Sailaporo and Kuratsuchi Mayuri teamed up to study, it is the same. Perhaps, Shendu wondered, can you try to kidnap that guy Urahara Kisuk? I remember he seemed to have a different idea of me. During the battle with Aizen in the present world, that guy Urahara Kisuk rushed to the battlefield immediately, and with the help of the Black Cloak and the number 26 Bakud Bent Light, he hid himself and watched the battle from one side. Although it is not clear what this guy is thinking, it can be vaguely judged that Urahara Kisuk's current target is still Aizen Suk. When the snipe and the clam compete, the fisherman wins. Shendu thought, maybe this guy has the same idea. Sooner or later, I will cheat this guy. In the sky, a huge shadow was flying towards Shendu's direction. It seems to be aware of the smell of sulfur in the air, as well as the high temperature that makes the lungs burn. Santos immediately flew out of the Void Night Palace, heading straight for Shendu's direction. Your Majesty, Your Majesty. His tone was anxious, as if something urgent had happened. Your Majesty, Shendu. Santos saluted Shendu in midair in a gesture that violated the rules of physics. Not long after you left, a frenzied gigantic Ajuchas invaded the forest of Minos Grande. That guy went on a feeding frenzy in the forest of Minos Grande and devoured hundreds of Jillians and Ajuchas. Hearing this, Shendu narrowed his eyes slightly, a flame burning in his heart. How long has it been since I became the king of Hueco Mundo? The provocative Ajuchas appeared so soon. Didn't Holy Bell stop that guy? Shendu asked. Santos showed embarrassment, hesitantly said, Master Holy Bell has gone, but he couldn't kill that big guy. On the contrary, in his growing strength, he fell into a state of protracted warfare. Shendu was keenly aware of the key point in Santos' words. Unkillable, not unbeatable. Santos nodded again and again. That big guy claims to be the strongest existence of Hueco Mundo with infinite power. Don't talk about the king of Hueco Mundo, even the Minos Grande of the world. He doesn't look down. And his strength is even constantly growing, as if there is really no upper limit. When he said this, Shendu had already guessed the gigantic Ajuchas that Toss said. Yami Largo, ostensibly the 10th of Espada, but after it returns to the blade, the original number 10 will also become 0. Its ability is Violent Rage, which can continuously accumulate strength through eating and sleeping a lot, and finally increase its own strength in a way of anger. Even without returning edge, just ajuches. Yami's strength is also comparable to Vasto Lord, or even better. This guy fought the Soul Society duo recklessly, and just now he fell completely under the opponent's combination, and even caused extremely serious injuries to Byakuya Kachiki and Zaraki Kenpachi. Its strength can be seen in Madara. For Hurley Bell at this stage, it is really difficult to kill Yami completely. Not to mention, around Yami, there may not be that Ulquiorra cipher guarding. Once Hurley Bell goes all out, he will most likely be besieged by these two guys. But these are Shendu's guesses. The specific situation will have to wait until we meet to know. Guys like Yami, available or not. The premise of his existence is that he is much more obedient than that Noit. The Forest of Minos Grande. Shendu didn't return to the Shuya Palace and immediately disappeared in place, leaving behind a dull buzzing sound. When Santos reacted, Shendu's figure had already disappeared at the end of his sight. Your Majesty's strength has actually increased. Santos said to himself frantically. As a subordinate, I must continue to work hard. Shendu gave the utmost care to these subordinates who had followed his faith fanatically since the Forest of Minos Grande. But any Ajuchas with the potential to advance to Vasto Lord will have sufficient resources to evolve to that stage. Among them, Cortez undoubtedly has this potential. As for Santos, although he cannot evolve to Vasto Lord, he can also further increase his speed and perception range by devouring other Minos Grande. Thus, the responsibility of scouting can be brought into full play to ultimate. The Forest of Minos Grande. Hurley Bell held the king shark in his hand and faced a monster like a hill with an ice-cold attitude. Pieces of hard muscles are like boulders inlaid on the black body, and the veins are exposed and piled up in the muscles, showing the strength of the terrifying Power Emperor. 12 hoofed feet like arthropods supported the huge body. While the dense hair covered the body, it also provided a defense that was difficult to break through. The ferocious giant horns grow on the top of the head, the back, and the arms, which not only add to its defense, but also provide a very strong means of attack. However, such a terrifying monster was still surrounded by countless wounds, and a large amount of blood sprayed out from it, almost converging into a small river on the ground. The berserk water flowed over Holy Bell's side, constantly changing his attack posture. How can this level kill the mighty Lord Yami? Yami laughed wildly, like a thunderous voice, echoing in the Forest of Minos Grande. I'm the strongest Yami Largo in Hueco Mundo. Its Ryatsu erupted again, and the already huge body swelled up as if blowing air. Looking at the scene in front of him, Hurley Bell felt a hint of helplessness in his heart. Since she started fighting with this guy, the opponent seems to have no upper limit. Once the injury is too serious, the Ryatsu will skyrocket, the body will become bigger, and the injury will be fully recovered. Although she could crush Yami every time, she still couldn't completely kill him. This guy may seem reckless, but he is actually extremely cautious. Every time you fight, you will protect important parts such as the heart, spine, and head. So much so that Hurley Bell has not been able to completely win it until now. And whenever it can't sustain it, it will gobble up the big Minos Grande in illusory forest to continue the high-intensity battle. Face this kind of guy. Hurley Bell felt very tired. If His Majesty is here. As soon as this thought came to her, she was keenly aware of the rise in the surrounding temperature and the reduction of moisture in the air. The faint smell of sulfur filled the air and gradually intensified, even overwhelming the thick and pungent smell of blood nearby. Even Yami was keenly aware of a trace of abnormality. Hurley Bell's iceberg expression that has remained unchanged for 10,000 years showed a smile at this moment, like flowers blooming in spring. The temperature is gradually rising, and the water vapor is shrinking, all of which indicate the occurrence of anomalies. Yami's Ryatsu was promoted to ultimate by him, and even his body shape increased again. It exists like a hill, and its shadow completely covers the entire sky. Even because the ground could not bear its weight, it continued to crack and sink, forming a series of hideous cracks. Well, quite a strong potential. Above the sky, a figure crushed the nearby quartz tree, stepped from the air step by step, and the terrifying Ryatsu also approached. The crimson surrounds the surroundings, almost condensing into substance, as if it wants to swallow everything. Ultimate's high temperature also engulfs the remaining water vapor, making the surroundings gradually scorching hot. Bet, after sleeping, Hurley Bell was very attached to Shendu, and she was no longer the iceberg she was at first. And this performance also made her 3 subordinate officials extremely jealous, and even rose to the level of personal attacks on Shendu. It will be good to watch the battle from the side, Shendu said calmly. About Yami, Shun Kong will be more obedient than Neutra. As soon as this came out, Hurley Bell immediately recalled Neutra, who attacked them at that time. That guy absolutely regretted it at the end. But Shendu didn't give him a second chance at all and directly pulled out his soul, which became his stepping stone to Arrancar. All right, Shendu looked at Yami. It's time to talk about the battle between us. Yami Largo. The sudden majestic posture made Yami suddenly vigilant, and even the muscles all over his body tensed. Tell me your choice. Shendu opened his arms wide, like a scale, and looked directly at Yami with haughty eyes. Surrender or die. Chapter 61, Your Majesty. Is this desert suburb really good? The breath of Shendu gave Yami the illusion of a natural enemy. Especially the scorching breath made him unable to suppress the panic in his heart. It was like an instinctive fear. The rising temperature around made Yami's mood extremely tense at this moment. A powerful existence that has never been seen before. He seems to be reckless, but he is actually much more cautious than Neutra's servant. King of Hueco Mundo, Shendu? Yami asked tentatively. It seems to have some understanding of Shendu's current identity. I have no intention of being your enemy. Seeing that Shendu didn't answer, Yami's thunderous voice sounded again, shaking the gravel on the ground and making a rustling sound. If this is your territory, I will withdraw from this place and never invade again. When this guy faced Shendu, he no longer had the arrogance he had at first, and he was completely retreating. Late, Shendu was still so calm, but the flames burning around him became more and more intense. Now you have only 2 choices. Either kneel down and sing for me to conquer, or go to hell and confess the sins of this life. 17 Seeing that the negotiation failed, Yami immediately erupted in Ryatsu, raising his thick arm like a stone pillar suddenly, and immediately set off bursts of violent wind. My uncle chooses the 3rd one. That's killing you. The thunderous sound echoed in the forest of Minos Grande, even causing the air to vibrate, forming sound waves visible to the naked eye and spreading toward the periphery. The powerful Ryatsu erupted from the mountain-like body, forming an even stronger gust of wind, sweeping away in all directions. The arm the size of a stone pillar blasted toward Shendu. 663. Violent winds and raging waves changed the color of the situation. Yami felt extra excited at this time. The power of this punch broke out to his best state ever. He seemed to have seen the scene where the so-called king of Hueco Mundo was punched into a pulp by him. Plasma exploded, stumps splashed. What a beautiful scene. Boom! The dull voice echoed in the empty desert, and the astonishing air waves rolled towards the surroundings, and the sky was filled with sand and dust, covering the sky and the moon. The nearby air exploded, forming a series of air explosions, which echoed in the desert. Yami's eyes widened, and she could hardly believe what was happening in front of her. That punch that I tried my best was actually blocked. Not only that, on the contact surface of the fist bones of both sides, a more terrifying force surged like a wave. How was this possible? Yami's heart was trembling, and the muscles on his face twitched uncontrollably, as if he saw some kind of monster. There's a guy with power beyond me. He couldn't understand it, let alone accept it. As the most massive existence in Minos Grande, Yami's strength has always been invincible. No matter how strong the opponent is, he still cannot resist his violent punch output. Even a Vasto Lord King-level Minos Grande, like Hurley Bell, avoids close combat collisions with him at all times during the battle. But this guy in front of me, Yami's eyes were immediately filled with blood, and a strong smell of blood permeated his body. Anger is like a flame, rising and burning suddenly, directly devouring his few rationality. Crunch, crunch. Yami's body made a tooth-piercing sound, as if some kind of gear was turning. The already huge and hard muscles are constantly expanding and strengthening, gradually turning into a real metal posture. A green and faint black light flickered on its muscles, showing its indestructible texture and the huge power contained in it. The black fur kept growing, hanging down on both sides of the body, and huge sharp horns drilled out from the top of its head, soaring straight into the sky, even completely shredding the clouds in the sky. Yami just took a heavy breath, and it formed a strong wind on the desert, sweeping the white sofa and howling. The sense of oppression is directly full. Shendu was a little surprised by this change of posture. I thought that the previous Yami had already been strengthened to the extreme, but what was surprising was that this product could continue to be strengthened. Is there really no upper limit? This guy is quite valuable for research. Shendu has been with Sailaporo and Kurasuchi Mayuri for a long time, and naturally accepted the influence of their ideas. There are no waste things, only waste that does not know how to use. Everything in the world has the value of research, unless you have already studied it. On this point, Kurasuchi Mayuri and Sailaporo have reached a high degree of consensus, and they are constantly practicing this concept in experiments. So that Shendu also believes that this concept has a very high reference value. Guys like Yami have almost unlimited potential, and when angry, they can infinitely enhance their own strength, as well as Ryatsu. At this moment, Shendu was standing in front of him, even smaller than one of his eyeballs. With a towering body like a mountain, just standing in place gives people a strong sense of oppression. I must kill you. Yami made a roaring sound, and the airwaves rolled in, forming a bloody gust of wind, rolling up dust and sand in the desert, almost covering the sky. Just standing there, this guy is enough to form a sky. The arm that was originally the size of a stone pillar was more like a small hill at this time. When it was lifted up and fell towards Shendu, it brought an unimaginable sense of oppression, gives a feeling of suffocation. Go to hell. Yami was roaring, and the black arms burst like big tendons like trees, showing the rage of power. The mountains collapsed, and a violent force like a mountain torrent roared over the desert at this moment. There is no dodge. Shendu went straight to meet him. Unremarkable, even some thin fist bones closed and rushed directly towards the huge shadow that covered the sky and the moon. A rumbling sound like an earthquake echoed in the void. The collision of pure power is vividly displayed at this moment. Yami's huge mountain-like body suddenly froze in place, as if the pause button had been pressed. At the moment of the collision, he seemed to feel the power of the world. His fist-bone bombardment, which condensed all the strength in his body, seemed to land on the whole world. The power gap between the two is like an abyss. The surface of the sand was trembling, and huge ravines like canyons were constantly cracking under the agitation of power, as if a natural disaster had come and the end of the world was coming. Click, click. Yami's expression was completely stiff, and the long-lost pain came from his finger bones. Never since he became a Juches had he tasted such pain. Those Minos Grandes who fought in the past, at best, cut his skin. There is no such thing as a bone-shattering injury. Even Holy Bell is the same. However, this collision of pure strength directly broke his hand bones. Yami was a complete loser at what he does best. The skin and flesh swelled, as if a living thing was wriggling, and the broken bones were broken into pieces, directly leaving the skin. The cracking sound of the bones was even more like a thunderstorm, roaring above the sky. Moreover, Shendu's strength remained undiminished. As if it was erupting endlessly, like an overwhelming force, it smashed all the bones on Yami's right arm in an instant. The flesh and blood exploded and turned into endless rain of blood, splashing in the sky and soaking the desert in an instant. Yami's thick, mountain-like arm exploded in midair, and the scattered flesh and blood fell into the desert like rain. In just a split second, the neighborhood turned bright red. At this moment, Yami didn't even cry out in pain and staggered a few steps, kicking up a lot of dust, rolling around its hoofed feet. He covered the severed arm with his left hand and looked at Shendu unwillingly. His ferocious face was full of tyrannical emotions. However, the fear deep in his eyes betrayed him directly. Facing Shindu's power, he could no longer restrain his instinctive fear. It's like a domestic dog facing a fierce tiger. The suppression of the class makes Yami not even a little bit hostile. Shindu moved his wrist. His expression was as calm as before. After he reached Arankar, the strength of the dragon body was further improved, and the power that could explode naturally also increased accordingly. The seemingly pure cow charm is no match for those powerful spells. But in fact, its potential is not weaker than other spells. Break through all methods with one force. When the power is strong enough to break the rules, then it becomes the new rules. Last chance. Shindu's blood-red eyes looked at Yami calmly. Tell me your choice. The cold gaze was full of murderous intent. Even if there was no escape from Ryatsu, it made Yami feel shuddering. In addition, Shindu blasted his right arm with a hammer, which was a major blow to his confidence. Now Yami has begun to have self-doubt. Submit, submit. Under the interweaving of fear and panic, as well as the worship of pure power, Yami can no longer maintain the previous tyrannical posture. The hooves and feet of the huge body bent, and they knelt down heavily on the ground. There was an earthquake immediately, and dust and sand filled the sky again. Yami bowed her proud head deeply and declared her allegiance to Shendu in the most pious gesture. As the anger subsides, so does the strength. The huge body like a mountain shrank at a speed visible to the naked eye, like a balloon being pricked by a needle. The moonlight in the night sky swayed over the desert again. The original Yami is no longer the same as the original one. After seeing the power of Shendu, he deeply remembered a truth. There is emptiness outside of emptiness and sky outside of sky. Realizing that Shendu is the current king of Hueco Mundo, Yami suddenly feels himself surrendering to him, and it doesn't seem to be a shame. After all, even the Berrigan Luzenbairn, which originally existed in Hueco Mundo, died at the hands of Shendu. It was a blessing among misfortunes that he, a special Ajuchas, survived. Shendu looked at Yami. His mountain-sized body was only a little more than 3 meters. Although he was still very tall, he no longer had the oppressive feeling before. Dense white bone armor wrapped his body, and the partially exposed body was covered with wounds. That was the commemoration left by Hurley Bell to him. If it wasn't for the consumption of Ryatsu, Yami might have recovered by itself as early as just now. Your Majesty, Your Majesty. Facing Shendu, Yami seemed a bit cautious and fearful. The previous battle had already left him with a lot of psychological shadow. Throwing out a flesh tonic, it happened to penetrate Yami's skin, and the green viscous liquid was directly injected into his flesh and blood. But a few seconds, the hideous injuries on his body are all recovered. Even the broken arm grows at a speed visible to the naked eye until it is intact. Shindu's magic is quite limited in terms of recovery, far inferior to the flesh tonic developed by Kuratsuchi Mayuri. After all, the devil is very good at destroying things, and repairing them is not his domain. With the help of Sailaporo, Kuratsuchi Mayuri's meat supplement has been improved several versions. With a limited supply of living materials, the flesh supplement is enough to restore serious injuries of the captain level, and it is extremely effective even for Vasto Lord. Go to Shiya Palace to report by yourself. Shindu waved his hand and ordered, also, let Sailaporo conduct an in-depth analysis on you. Just say it's my order. He will conduct research on you without threatening your life. Yami didn't even dare to look into Shindu's eyes, turned his head, and ran towards the Shuya Palace. The burly body took off and landed, leaving deep pits on the desert. Your Majesty, Yami 3. Cero doesn't have such a high degree of loyalty. Hurley Bell came from the side and reminded softly, as long as he doesn't want to die, he won't choose to betray. Shindu doesn't know much about Yami, but he believes in the deterrence of his own power. If Yami dares to choose not to obey orders and betray, Shindu didn't mind making it into a living specimen directly, and sent it to Sailaporo and Kuratsuchi Mayuri for research. Yami, who was running in the desert, suddenly shuddered and subconsciously looked in Shendu's direction. At this moment, he seemed to be shrouded in endless malice. The 8th step towards the ultimate has been completed. Template progress 45% to 50%. Unlock the chicken charm. Current abilities: Dragon Body, Fire Magic, Demon Magic, Dragon Charm, Pig Charm, Cow Charm, Sheep Charm, Snake Charm, Monkey Charm, Chicken Charm. Ryatsu. Superling Way, to be evolved. As Yami Largo surrenders, new spells are unlocked. Shendu felt his soul swell accordingly, and new power poured out of it continuously. The ability of the Chicken Talisman is telekinetic power. For the current Shendu, it is not very useful. It is just more means of attack. Perhaps it will save a lot of effort in flight. But now he has no idea to experience the power of the chicken charm. Shendu looked down at Hurlybell on the side. His fiery eyes met in the air, and the surrounding air seemed to suddenly become a little ambiguous. No hesitation. Shendu grabbed Hurlybell's slender waist, stuck to his body, lowered his head, and whispered in his ear, "Hurlybell, what do you think of the wild?" Chapter 62. The Shuya Palace don't want trash. There is no distinction between day and night in Hueco Mundo. From the beginning to the end, it was just shrouded in night and shone by moonlight. So much so that when Shendu ended his battle, it even felt like a long time had passed. He rubbed his chin to figure it out and said to himself, "Probably this is the reason for the long sky." Hurlybell couldn't understand the meaning of Shendu's words, just snuggled into his arms, feeling the tenderness for a moment. At this time, she was no longer as resistant as she was when she first surrendered. As time goes by, Hurlybell's attachment to Shendu is also the deepest and most irreducible. After a moment of warmth, Shendu took Hurlybell back to the Void Knight Palace, just in time to see if this guy Yami followed his orders. His Majesty, Sailaporo, waited in front of the laboratory, bowed respectfully when he saw Shendu return. After several trimmings, this guy is much more obedient than before. Coupled with the existence of Kuratsuchi Mayuri, who can replace him at any time, Sailaporo has devoted himself to many experimental researches and has not shown any signs of fishing for water. According to your instructions, the research on Yami has started, Sailaporo said in a graceful manner. Although the guy is big and his Ryatsu is not weaker than any Ajucha's, he is very obedient. Although I don't know what you did to him, but when I heard your name, Yami started to tremble, and I couldn't even maintain Ryatsu's stability. In view of this, you'd better visit him while he's unconscious. As soon as this remark came out, Shendu was a little surprised. Co-authoring this is to throw that Yami guy into a psychological shadow. Ryatsu, who can't control himself just by hearing the name, will indeed have some problems if they meet. How far has the research progressed? Shendu asked. Can you analyze specific data for his unique talent? Your Majesty, please follow me. Sailaporo makes an inviting gesture. The two then passed through the side door of the laboratory and entered another monitoring room. On the wall, a huge light curtain reflected the figure of 17 Milesya. At this time, he was restlessly lying on the operating table, and his burly body, several meters high, was directly dissected by Sailaporo. But the strange thing is, even if this guy's abdominal cavity has been completely cut open, he still doesn't feel any pain at all. Apart from the restlessness on his face, there seemed to be no discomfort. Kuratsuchi Mayuri guy's dissection method. Seeing the confusion on Shendu's face, Sailaporo answered it. Through the injection of medicine, the test product can be immune to pain in a short period of time. With the existence of meat supplements, we can restore the test product to its original state at any time. In this regard, Sailaporo has plenty of confidence. As the most powerful researcher of Hueco Mundo, his learning level is no less than that of Nemiyuri. Even though the two have not been in contact for a long time, Sailaporo still fully learned the scientific system of Soul Society and applied it. What about the research progress on Yami? It's not difficult at all. Although only studied for a while, Sailaporo still proudly replied, Its essence stems from the large size and the accumulation of Ryatsu while eating. He began to explain in detail. Yami's body structure is different from the usual Minos Grande in that it can store a large amount of Ryatsu inside its body. Whether it is eating or sleeping, it can be continuously accumulated. If you replicated this structure in Jillian's body, you could achieve a similar effect. It's just going to cut a lot. Shendu's eyes lit up, as if he saw unparalleled Jillian army appearing in front of him. He has personally tested Yami's ability. Nothing but an Ajuchas, not even Arankar, still withstood his violent blow, but did not die completely. This performance alone is already very powerful. Even though Jillian's body will reduce a lot, it's still worth trying. There is nothing in the imaginary circle, just Minos Grande, especially Jillian. Jillian, who is born and dies every day, is not a small number. Do what you want. Shendu issued a new order. Try to pick some Jillians who have no potential to form a new team. Leave it to Yami to lead. Seo Laporo nodded in response, unable to hide the excitement in his eyes. Experiments and research are the most difficult for people to control. After Shendu ordered, he walked to another laboratory to prepare for a new round of Minos Grande Arancarization. The previous batch of Minos Grande after Arankar has been numbered and arranged according to the design in the original book. Shendu did not follow its arrangement according to the strength of killing ability, but arranged it according to the order of Arankar. As for the position of Espada, it was temporarily vacated by him. Berrigan and Neutra are dead. Holy Bell and Seo Laporo and Yami all surrender. There's still 5 original Espadas left, at this time wandering in some corners of Hueco Mundo. In view of the relatively scarce high-end combat power under his command, Shendu doesn't mind taking all the remaining Espadas under his command. However, with the efficiency of Aizen's actions, it is very likely that he has already started a new action. Santos, Shendu called out, when even a vulture covered with miscellaneous hairs flew down from a distance. Accelerate the expansion of the territory of Void Knight Palace and occupy the entire Hueco Mundo as quickly as possible. I want only one voice to exist in this world. For a while, Santos' face was flushed and his expression was extremely excited. As you order, Your Majesty Shendu. After all, he flapped his wings and flew to the distance, conveying Shendu's order in the Shuya Palace. Santos has average strength and average brain. But fortunately, the loyalty is full and the speed and perception are strong enough to serve as a messenger to convey orders in the Shuya Palace. In the future, when the Hueco Mundo version of the magic machine is finished, Santos can also save part of the time and energy. Related research. Shendu has put Kurat Tsuchi Mayuri on the agenda. He wants to make Hueco Mundo into a world similar to this world or Soul Society. Least, it can't be as desolate as it is now. The rapid expansion plan of Shuya Palace started again under Shendu's order. Like a sophisticated machine, Shuya Palace mobilized from top to bottom. Numerous Minos Grande also spread out in a circular shape in the Night Palace, like a boundless dark cloud, shrouded in the night sky of Hueco Mundo. Under the leadership of Minos Grande, such as Holy Bell and Cortez, is expanding towards further fields. And this movement undoubtedly caused panic among the hidden Minos Grandes in Hueco Mundo. It's no secret within the Hueco Mundo that Berrigan, Lord of the Hueco Mundo, died at the hands of the newly evolved Vasto Lord Shendu. Although Hueco Mundo communication is difficult under the spread of Jillian and Ajuchas who have individual consciousness, this event, which is enough to shock the entire Hueco Mundo, has gradually spread to the entire Hueco Mundo. But any existence with individual consciousness is shocked by this information. Anyone who has experienced the horror of Berrigan knows something about it. And if Shendu can kill him, his strength will inevitably be even more terrifying. So much so that when Shuya Palace began to expand again, the remaining free sky was completely desolate. They don't want to submit to the Shuya Palace. For them, freedom is the highest pursuit, even if the purpose of becoming stronger is only for freedom. They don't want to try the feeling of living under the fence. Berrigan, the king of the virtual circle of the previous generation, is a pure salty fish. After calling himself the king of Hueco Mundo, he just guards such a small territory and entertains himself in it. He has no preparation to dominate the entire Hueco Mundo. The emergence of the new king undoubtedly broke this concept. This is only a short period of time, and the expansion of the Shiya Palace has started again. For a while, feel vain. At the same time, the name of Shendu spread throughout Hueco Mundo. Layers of gigantic rocks and rocks piled up in the endless desert, covering thousands of miles. The territory of Minos Grande, which was originally calm and calm, suddenly became turbulent at this time, and countless powerful Ryatsu poured into this area. The leader, wearing a white slim uniform, outlines a proud figure, and under the slim waist, there's almost explosive power. Her long black hair was combed into a ponytail and hung behind her back. A lock of white hair fell to her smooth forehead, and a pair of glass-like eyes reflected infinite, turbulent fighting spirit. On its smooth and slender neck, a circle of white exoskeleton surrounds it, adding a few different colors to it. One of the strongest combat forces under Shendu, Cortez. Because of the achievement of Arankar, its strength has once again climbed several levels. And the white bone ring around her neck is her mask. This time I came to this area, under the order of Shendu, to come to surrender an Ajuchas hidden here. According to the information provided by the subordinates, the Minos Grande hidden in this huge rock area is named Zamari Ruros, and it has a rotation speed far exceeding that of Minos Grandes of the same level. At their level, they can't even get close to each other. Hey, with our strength, we can definitely crush this guy. Cortez's fists collided in front of him, making a sound of gold and iron interlacing. If you look closely, you can see that on her white palm, she is wearing a knuckle-like weapon. This is the weapon embodied by her ability Arankar, and it has a very elegant name. Jade Flower June. Cortez looked around and found that the place was covered by boulder rock formations, and there was almost no place to enter. With a violent temper, she will not be used to it, and she will even order it. Everyone is there. Cero is ready. Blow me down here. Following Cortez's order, Minos Grande, under his command, immediately began to brew Cero. The thick spiritual particles converged towards the center, and the red light soaked the night, almost dyeing half of the sky red. Boom! Cero erupted, and a violent explosion exploded in front of it, directly smashing the rock formation completely. What a troublesome bunch. A figure like a giant pumpkin appeared not far from Cortez. Destroyed my homeland, then use your lives to pay for it. As a Minos Grande, Zamari is not a good character, not to mention that the group of Minos Grandes in front of him has destroyed the area where he has been living. He immediately launched his strongest speed, leaving an afterimage on the spot, which instantly approached Cortez. However, before Zamari could launch an attack, Cortez swung his fist with a smirk on his face and threw it directly at his face. Its speed is so fast that it even exceeds the reaction speed of Zamari. Boom! Come fast, go back even faster. Zamari turned into a meteor with its tail trailing disappeared instantly from the end of the line of sight and smashed hard into the ruins, stirring up dust all over the sky. How dare you bark at this speed? A disdainful smile appeared on Cortez's face, and he immediately started spinning, teleporting in the direction where Zamari was gone. As Minos Grande in the form of a horse, she is best at speed. The previous display of berserk power was only under the blessing of ultimate speed, which made it appear extremely exaggerated. An Ajuchas who doesn't even have Arankar, who dares to show the so-called speed advantage in front of her, is definitely in the toilet. Boom! There was another violent explosion. The dust stirred up, and a figure flew out of the dust. Zamari was caught by Cortez and punched into the sky with a punch, and she followed closely behind, immediately followed by a series of mindless violent blows. War Trample. The turbulent Ryatsu merged into his fist bones, causing Cortez's fists to burst into blood-red light, shining brightly above the sky. The present Minos Grande all saw that violent scene clearly. A slender figure shuttled into the sky, constantly hammering Zamari, who had been reduced to a sandbag. At a speed far exceeding his spinning speed, Zamari could not even fight back. His control skill, called love, couldn't be realized on Cortez, because his eyes couldn't keep up with Cortez's movements. A waste like you, even if you surrender to his majesty, it's useless. Cortez was full of blood and fighting spirit. It's better to kill him as soon as possible. In her aesthetic view, guys like Zamari undoubtedly lowered the overall level. Even those casually long Minos Grandes in the forest of Minos Grandes look much more pleasing to the eye than him. This kind of guy will only be an eyesore if he joined Shuya Palace. As soon as a thought arose, the strength of his fist was much faster than before. Ever since, Zamari, who was supposed to be one of Espada, was beaten to death by Cortez. Adhering to the principle of waste utilization, Cortez chose to devour Zamari's spirit son. She was only one layer away from Vasto Lord, after devouring Ajuchas with special abilities like Zamari. Evolution begins. At this time, there is another Minos Grande gathering place far away in Hueco Mundo. Hurley Bell stared blankly at the crowd surrounding him, calmly looked at the leopard-shaped Minos Grande, and asked aloud, "Grimjow, is this your answer?" Chapter 63, I stand at the top, looking down on everything. Surrender? The leopard-shaped Minos Grande sneered disdainfully, as if laughing at the word. How could I, Grimjow, submit to a Minos Grande I've never met? Even you, Hurley Bell, are not worthy of my surrender. As the famous prickly head of Espada, Grimjow has no intention of surrendering at all, no matter who the other party is. Besides Grimjow, there are 5 Minos Grande beside him. They have followed Grimjow since Jillian's time, and even willingly let Grimjow devour their bodies because of their potential. It can be regarded as one of the few friendships among Hueco Mundo. If that's the case, then I'll beat you to the end. Perhaps because of being with Shendu for a long time, Hurley Bell is also infected with the disease. If they don't agree with each other, they will go to war directly. The raging tide swayed from behind it, covering an area of more than 10 miles in an instant. Hurley Bell raised his hand and clasped his index finger in the ring at the end of the queen's handle. With a pull, a bright cold light flashed in front of Grimjow and the others. "Hey, great!" After Grimjow snarled, his expression was excited to ultimate. As a real fighting maniac, his desire for fighting is not weaker than that of Neutra, and its fighting spirit is much stronger than that of Neutra. An opponent so much weaker than him that Grimjow would never even fight again. And this kind of character, on the contrary, made Shendu appreciate him a little. Compared to Neutra, Grimjow can survive in a group better and can lead Minos Grande better under him. But Neutra is different, which forces the cub to have the possibility of murdering his companions at any time. If it can't be beaten, some vicious plans will be born. It's just downright bad. That's why Shendu didn't give him a chance at that time. What Shendu wants to establish is a dynasty of evil dragons, not a group of killers. Thousands of years ago, after Yamamoto Jinryuzai fought against Uebach and other Quincy divisions, he also realized the problem of the captain of the first-generation guard team he assembled, and even Raijin Jaka corrected it. As a result, only Yamamoto Jinryuzai and Uno Hanaretsu are still active as the captains of the first generation. Shindu's idea is generally consistent with it. The first thing to be sure is the stability of your own power. For unstable factors like Neutra, it is better to get rid of them as soon as possible. The soaring golden Ryatsu is like an endless fountain, dyeing the sky and the earth in an instant, and the sight is full of golden brilliance. Hurley Bell didn't hold back too much, and Grimjow's name had already spread among Hueco Mundo, but it didn't spread too widely. An out-and-out fighter. Make fighting fun and enjoy the ajuchas of pure fighting. I won't show mercy, even if Hurley Bell's momentum has exploded to ultimate, and Ryatsu is overwhelming like a sea tide. Grimjow still didn't have the slightest fear, and immediately stirred up the wild Ryatsu, which was not weak at all, and let the wind howl and howl around it. Ho 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 ho! The violent roar vibrated above the sky like a thunderbolt, rolling up dust and sand, covering the sky and blocking out the sun. An uncontrollable sound pressure was directly formed, and the cold air was distorted. A ferocious expression instantly appeared in front of Hurley Bell. The sharp claws raised and slapped her head mercilessly. There was azure blue light on it, even splitting the surrounding air together. Clang! The sound of gold and iron intertwined vibrates in the desert, forming sound waves, trembling towards the distance. Xiao Lonkafang and the others had already stayed away from the battlefield in the first place. Although it is the same Ajuches as Grimjiao, its combat power is not weaker than Minos Grande of the same level. But in the current battle scene, they can't even bear the aftermath. If Grimjiao was not still fighting, Xiao Lonkafang would have slipped away with the remaining few brothers. Can't beat it all. Can barely be a spectator. Boss, he won't die, right? The other side seems to be very cruel. Hurley Bell, one of the few Vasto lords in Hueco Mundo, and she seems to have evolved again. Hope Grimjiao doesn't die. The most powerful existence in Lonkafang also has a very high voice in this small group, second only to Grimjiao. Through the mask, like a prison cell, the blood-red eyes stared at the two figures in the distance who were constantly changing directions and fighting. He can become the existence of Vasto Lord. As early as decades ago, when Xiao Lonkafang realized that he could not evolve to Vasto Lord. In order for Grimjiao to evolve to Vasto Lord, he let him swallow a part of his body, causing himself to degenerate to Jillian level. Not long ago, with the help of Grimjiao, it re-evolved into Ajuches. And Grimjiao is already not far from Vasto Lord, and perhaps devouring some Ajuches will be enough to become Wang Su of the highest level. Vasto Lord, what's with that look of yours, Hurley Bell? Grimjiao was shouting. His expression became more and more crazy, and he really entered the state of fighting. The leopard's claws tore through the air and even filled the surroundings with a faint burning smell. I will kill you with my own hands. Don't underestimate people too much. Hurley Bell held the queen shark with one hand and kept defending against attacks from all angles. It never occurred to her that words alone could subdue a guy like Grimjiao. If he really surrendered like this, it will make people doubt his motives. Grimjiao turned into afterimages, shuttled in all directions, and attacked Hurley Bell from various impossible angles. The turbulent sound of gold and iron interlacing echoed across the desert like a symphony. Attack! Grimjiao growled. Hurley Bell, what are you waiting for? Of course it was when the timing came. A calm voice suddenly appeared in Grimjiao's ear. Immediately, Grimjiao, who was about to slash his claws, heard a voice behind him. Like now, the golden Ryatsu bloomed on the queen shark, and it was like a shark slamming forward. Grimjiao only felt as if his back was hit by a meteor. The severe pain made it difficult for him to hide his distorted expression, and the whole animal turned into a graceful arc, disappearing at the end of his sight in an instant. The leopard-shaped body wrapped in white bone armor, under the violence, plowed deep ravines on the sand, forcibly drawing a distance of thousands of meters. Grimjiao turned his back, and his slender, streamlined body rolled up on the ground, and the leopard claws immediately tore the sand below. Seeing that he had a moment of rest, he turned into a blue flash and went straight to Hurley Bell in the distance at the end. The first small defeat was nothing to the belligerent Grimjiao. Just like Xiao Lonkafang's trust in him, Grimjiao also firmly believes in himself and will never fail. When he was running, he suddenly raised the leopard claws, and several emerald green sharp nails shot out from them, passing through the space in an instant, heading straight for Hurley Bell. Grimjiao's unique ability, Leopard Hook. Boom, boom, boom. This attack was so powerful that it immediately blasted 100 meters of dust on the sand surface, covering Hurley Bell's sight. Before the dust and sand fell, a scorching red light bloomed indistinctly on the opposite side, and countless spirits gathered in it instantly. Fiddle used the leopard hook as a feint to confuse Hurley Bell's perception and vision. Cero is an actual attack, and he is bound to swallow Hurley Bell and establish an absolute advantage. Pity. Hurley Bell, as Vasto Lord, has seen as much combat as Grimjiao, if not more. She doesn't like to evolve herself at the cost of devouring and killing. But that doesn't mean Holy Bell is afraid to run away from a fight. On the contrary, she will burst out amazing fighting potential for everything she cares about. The golden light is bright, and the surging spiritual power is condensed. Facing the onrushing Cero, the Queen of Sharks went straight to meet him impartially. The golden light, like a cannonball, instantly detached from the blade, making a piercing, whistling sound in the air. Song Jian Cannon. The collision of red and gold exploded an astonishing wave of air in front, forming ripples visible to the naked eye, moving far away. The dust has not subsided, and even the aftermath of energy is still continuing. A vigorous figure suddenly rushed out of it, attacking Hurley Bell with a frenzied posture. This scene surprised Hurley Bell. In order to win, Grimjow didn't care whether he would get hurt. Absolutely pure fighting madness. His purpose is only one, and that is to enjoy the pleasure of fighting. Haha die. Grimjow was laughing maniacally. Blue light erupted above the leopard's paw, and the surging Ryatsu surged, reflecting Holy Bell's unwavering face. When the Emperor Shark Empress leaned against the leopard's claws impartially. Don't you know the gap between us? Holy Bell admonished Grimjow like an elder. I stand at the apex of Minos Grande and look down on everything. And you haven't even reached Arankar. Ryatsu burst out, the airflow flipped, and the Grimjow was thrown out in an instant. The majestic tide surged from both sides of Hurley Bell, covering a range of hundreds of miles. On the blade of the Emperor Shark Empress, several strange and distorted characters began to glow faintly. The ocean current rolls back and falls towards the sky, covering the night sky. As far as the eye can see, it is covered with turbulent currents. Xiaolong, Ku Fong, and others were completely stunned and shocked beyond measure. The appearance of this scene completely broke their cognition. Incomprehensible. Even Grimjow froze, forgetting to attack for a moment. Immediately, he reacted and looked at Hurley Bell unwillingly. His limbs bent, and the surging power was compressed by ultimate. I won't just give up the fight. Victory is mine. The claw of the Leopard King. The blue light streaks across the sky tore apart the endless ocean currents, and even the nearby space made an overwhelmed, creaking sound. Grimjow swung his claws down. 10 blue streaks of light seemed to cut off the sky together. The turbulent ocean current looks fragile in front of it, and it will collapse every day. However, at the moment when the ocean current was divided, endless Ryatsu surged in it and instantly turned into a more violent ocean current to fill it up. The Leopard King's claw, which is omnipotent, also appears to be sluggish in front of this new ocean current, and it is even impossible to cut it down. Let's appreciate the real power. Hurley Bell held the Queen Shark with his arms raised flat and the tip of the knife pointing down. Conquer him, Queen of the Sharks. The sea current surged and turned into a pearl oyster, enveloping Hurley Bell in it. After returning to the blade, the Queen Shark slashed down, and Hurley Bell, who was returning to the blade, also appeared in front of Grimjow again. Ryatsu, who was already enough to suffocate Su, swelled to the extreme. The sea tide scattered, forming a torrential rain that covered the night, engulfing the endless desert. This gesture, Grimjow stood still, the blue light on his front paw fluctuating and flickering. After returning to the blade, Good Jow Good, Hurley Bell's Ryatsu, has completely crushed him. The two are not on the same level at all. The release of Ryatsu alone made him feel as if there was a boulder in his heart, and the unspeakable suffocation impacted Grimjow's thinking. Instinctive fear reminds Grimjow to stay away from the current Hurley Bell. However, it was the emergence of this kind of emotion that made Grimjow feel as if his hair had exploded and the hairs on his body surface stood on end except for the bone armor. I will never lose. The roar of the Leopard King even overwhelmed the rainstorm falling from the zenith and the turbulent ocean current. A more terrifying blue light bloomed on the claws again, which even made Su unable to look directly, giving Su a stinging feeling of tearing his eyes. Ring in turn, Grimjow disappeared on the spot, approaching Hurley Bell in an instant, and the Leopard King's claws raised up, which was bound to tear him apart. Facing this blow, Hurley Bell raised the shark-shaped Emperor Shark in his hand, and endless water flowed out from the gill-shaped lines, gathering the surrounding sea currents in it, continuously compressing and converging. Broken waterfall. Hurley Bell, with a firm expression, slashed forward impartially. The violent water flow forms an incomparable water column, and the front is swept and glazed. The blue light curtain tore open the sky, tore open the endless ocean currents, and even tore towards the broken waterfall unabated. However, that radiant blue light became weaker and weaker, but it only traveled a normal distance, where it was completely reduced, and it no longer had the slightest power. Rumble. The broken waterfall slammed down on Grimjow's back without holding back, swept him into it, and forced a huge, deep hole on the ground, burying Grimjow in it. The growling sound also died down, and even Ryatsu became faint. Grimjow, total failure. Chapter 64, Unconvinced, then beat until convinced Hurley Bell dissipated the ocean currents all over the sky, allowing the battlefield to return to the reflection of the moonlight. She didn't have the slightest intention to hold back from the previous blow of breaking the waterfall. Grimjow's strong Yamato's amazing fighting will also surprise Hurley Bell. It's no wonder that before she set off, Shendu told her to catch anyone who could be alive. Such an astonishing will to fight. Even Hurley Bell was not as good when he was in a jutsus. The damp water vapor dissipated, and a large hole like a chinking settled on the desert. However, just as Hurley Bell was about to step forward, the 5 Minos Grandes who were watching the battle from a distance immediately started to spin and blocked the deep pit. Looking at their determined eyes, it seems that they don't want to see Grimjow die here. Hurley Bell. Xiaolong Kufong stood at the front. A faint red light bloomed on the blade-like hand bones. That's a sign of Ryatsu restlessness. It is also a prerequisite for Minos Grande to prepare to attack. The other 4 Minos Grande were also extremely loyal, firmly protecting the pit. In fact, they also hunted and killed Grimjow during the Ajuchas period, but after discovering that Grimjow had the potential to evolve into Vasto Lord, they chose to follow and even let a part of their body be swallowed by it. Enough to show their loyalty to Grimjow. How could the 5 Minos Grande, who are not afraid of death, be afraid of Hurley Bell? Go away, go away! A weak voice came from the deep pit, and a staggering white figure stepped out of it step by step. At this time, Grimjow's white bone armor was nearly half shattered, and the overflowing blood added a bit of embarrassment to it. Only that day's blue eyes were full of unwillingness. The result of this battle is already very obvious. He was mortally wounded, while Hurley Bell was unharmed, not even a scratch of the skin. According to this posture, even if there are 2 more Grimjows, it will be a situation of being hammered. I lost Grimjow, said in an unwilling tone, but I'm not convinced. As the being who also has the ability to be a Vasto Lord, Grimjow does not consider himself inferior to any Vasto Lord. All he lacked was time. Although you can beat me violently, I just refuse to accept it. Hurley Bell nodded. Minos Grande also understood Grimjow's thoughts. Your Majesty 980 can make you fight Arankar and become stronger. Even evolving Vasto Lord is not out of the question. And all you have to do is surrender. In the end, Hurley Bell's tone was full of irrefutable meaning. For a while, Xiaolong, Kufong, and the others all set their sights on Grimjow. They originally chose the strong to surrender, and they have no opinion at all about switching to Shendu. It all depends on Grimjow. Evolution is stronger. Grimjow closed his eyes in pain, struggling in his heart. He claims to be the strongest Ajuchas in Hueco Mundo, but he was still beaten mercilessly when facing Vasto Lord. However, such an existence still chose to submit to the new generation of Hueco Mundo King. The strength of Shendu can be imagined. I don't like nonsense. Hurley Bell immediately broke out Ryatsu and directly suppressed Xiao, Long Kufong, and others who were standing in front of her. The horrible oppression even made them kneel down, unable to resist. Hurley Bell spun to Grimjow's side and picked him up by the scruff of the neck with one hand, like scratching a cat. Then his figure disappeared in place. Xiao Long, Ku Fong, and others looked at each other in blank dismay, obviously not mentally prepared for this sudden situation. How to do? Boss has been kidnapped. We can't beat it together. The battle between Hurley Bell and Grimjow left them all heartbroken as they watched from the sidelines. In addition, when the strong coercion fell just now, Xiao Lonkafang and the others completely lost the idea of fighting. I can't beat it, and I can't bear it all together. Go to Shuya Palace. In the end, Huang made a decision. Void Knight Palace. Inside the newly built majestic palace, a high platform is built, on which stands the throne of bones, and a white figure sits on it. Shendu looked helplessly at the two people below and sighed softly. That is to say, Cortez, you ate that Zamari Ruro's guy. Then evolved into Vasto Lord. Cortez nodded again and again, not at all embarrassed, but rather complacent, considering that this guy looks like he's going to grow his brain at every turn. BHBF, Shendu didn't care too much. Just eat it. Not bad for Zamari. Such an Espada, Minos Grande. Big deal, and pick the right Minos Grande from Ajuchas on top. The Santos guy is pretty darn good. Anyway, they're good at speed. Santos' speed is even stronger. The only problem is that Cortez has always been so stupid. It is really a waste of good looks. So that Shendu was a little difficult to handle when he started. So stupid. But sometimes this guy can use his brain so well that even Apache and the others can't match it. After questioning Cortez, Shendu turned his gaze to the other side. Holy Bell lived up to expectations and returned smoothly with Grimjow. To be precise, it is carrying. The majestic Leopard King, being carried by the back of the neck like a cat, really has no dignity at all. So much so that when Hurley Bell threw Grimjow on the palace grounds, the guy fell into a fake coma, trying to escape reality. Stop pretending. Shendu flicked his fingers, and a hot spark landed on Grimjow's tail, which immediately made this guy jump up instinctively. Your soul is so excited to ultimate. The sheep charm can make Shendu look at some unprotected souls. A slightly weaker existence can even extract its soul. Of course, like those Minos Grande in its heyday, it is still a bit difficult to extract its soul, and it is even more difficult for the existence of more deceitful ones. This is why Shendu did not use the power of the sheep spell when fighting Aizen. Grimjow flicked his tail to extinguish the flames growing on it, and looked at Shendu angrily. This operation undoubtedly threw his dignity on the ground and trampled on it again. He wants to escape from reality. Is it so difficult? Although I don't know what dangerous things you're thinking. Shendu propped his cheek with his right hand and said thoughtfully, but your eyes are very dangerous. Not convinced, Grimjow bowed his head in silence, angry and stubborn. Holy Bell took him out and beat him again. Beat until you are served. Shendu waved his hand, signaling Holy Bell to hurry up. Grimjow spun, dodged the grasping palm, and roared angrily at the throne of bone on the high platform. I'm going to challenge you. The Leopard King's claws unfolded, and along with the red Cero, they all burst toward Shendu. At this moment, Grimjow completely let go of all his strength. He is not afraid of his own injuries at all, and he will not consider whether the battle will lead to the crisis of death. Boom! Then, there is no more. A seriously injured Ajuchas, not even Arankar. So what if he has the potential of Vasto Lord? Shendu can hold Holy Bell on the hammer. In every sense, yes. After a wave of explosive hammers, Grimjow completely lost consciousness and finally passed out. And through this battle, he has re-recognized the truth of what is called emptiness and emptiness, and the truth that there's a sky outside the sky. Drag it down and fix it. Shendu signaled Sailaporo to bring the unconvinced guy to the lab. A simple analysis will do. Grimjow is a Minos Grande with the potential to be a Vasto Lord. Hurley Bell Cortez you can't study, but Grimjow is okay, just don't mess it up. Sailaporo got Shendu's approval, and the expression on his face was distorted with excitement. The number of Vasto Lords in the virtual circle is so rare that if you want to study it on weekdays, he can only dig a piece of meat from himself to analyze it. The rest of Vasto Lord either couldn't be found or couldn't be defeated after finding it. Even if he can fight, Shendu will not allow him to conduct experimental research. This made Sailaporo so angry that he had nowhere to vent, so he could only try to study those ajuches. Now it's hard to get a Minos Grande with the potential to be a Vasto Lord. Be sure to cherish it. Ever since, Grimjow was held on the shoulder by Sailaporo and taken away directly. There are two more difficult guys. Shendu looked at the back of Sailaporo going away, thinking from the bottom of his heart. Coyote Stark is undoubtedly the strongest presence in Espada. Autonomous Aaron Car, Split Soul, Infinite Fill Cero. As for Ulquiorra Cipher, it has the potential to return to the blade in the second stage. And Hueco Mundo is also a very precious existence in the whole Hueco Mundo. Not long ago, he rankerized Santos and Yami, which made their strength and Ryatsu have another skyrocketing improvement. Santos' speed can even be compared to Cortez's speedy Vasto Lord. This also makes him the most important intelligence officer under Shendu. And just before Holy Bell and the others came back, Santos gave him the information about Ulquiorra. At this point, Ulquiorra and Yami have nothing to do with each other. Not even Yami had heard the name Ulquiorra Cipher, the extreme west of Hueco Mundo, where the black-winged demons gather. Shendu lowered his eyes slightly, and with a slight voice, he murmured the information provided by Toss. Hueco Mundo is as big as the present world and Soul Society. It is not uncommon for a special ethnic group to be born in it. Shendu has no doubts about this. And, in his impression, it was precisely because of his special appearance that Ulquiorra was rejected by the same kind, and thus left the gathering place of the ethnic group. Holy Bell, you stay in the Void Palace. Shendu ordered. I'm worried about that guy Cortez. Restrict Sailaporo's research authority in the near future. I need to go to the far west. Hurley Bell hesitated, but nodded obediently. Obviously, she wanted to go with Shendu. But considering that the Void Knight Palace also needs to be guarded by Minos Grande, Hurley Bell chose to obey Shendu's order. Throne of Bones, white the figure flickered past. Shendu turned to Hurley Bell, raised her delicate chin domineeringly, and gently pressed it on one run. I'll go and come back. Hurley Bell's cheeks were reddish, and even the lines on his face became more apparent. The next moment, Shendu disappeared in the Shuya Palace. Far west, the castle-like mountain stands in the boundless desert, and the huge ethnic group Ryatsu surges in it like a sea tide. Standing in front of the castle, Shendu could vaguely see Minos Grande coming in and out of the lair. The whole body is pitch black, and there are huge wings spreading out behind it from time to time, giving people a strong sense of oppression. Although they are all ajuches, they are extremely humanoid in shape. Like this group of people, it's best to submit all of them to Shuya Palace. The corner of Shendu's mouth raised. I don't want to see some uneasy factors appear one day. Boom! The berserk Ryatsu unleashed and scrupulously, enveloping the entire castle mountain in an instant. Immediately, a mass of dark clouds flew out of it, covering the sky and the moon, causing this area to fall into deeper darkness again. Vasto Lord. Looks like the new king of Hueco Mundo. This guy actually spanned most of the Hueco Mundo. The buzzing sound reverberated in the sky, and it seemed that there was not much repulsion for Shendu's arrival, but more curiosity. Your Majesty Shendu, may I ask what is your purpose for coming to our ethnic group? A moment later, a black-winged demon with 3 sharp horns on its head flew out of the group and landed in front of Shendu with a more respectful expression. Collection. Shendu frowned slightly, as if he didn't find any trace of Ulquiorra. The whole Hueco Mundo needs only one voice to exist. The Blackwing Demon Group can choose to surrender or die. He didn't have the idea of talking nonsense with these guys. 3 minutes to think. Otherwise, they all die. The most indispensable thing in Hueco Mundo is Minos Grande, whether you are a Juches or Jillian. The main purpose of Shendu coming here is still Ulquiorra. Such a useful tool, man, cannot be snatched away by Aizen. As soon as these words came out, there was even more noise around the castle. They didn't calm down until Shendu broke out Ryatsu again. Surrender. Without thinking about it for a long time, this group of people collectively chose to surrender. They are still in awe of the title of king of Hueco Mundo. You can choose to move to the vicinity of Shuya Palace, or you can stay here and continue to live. Shendu lowered his eyes and looked at the black-winged demons who knelt and surrendered. It depends on your own choice. Now, there's an important question for you to answer. Among the black-winged demons, there's a whole-body white alien. Where is he? Hearing this, the triangular black-winged demon hesitated for a moment, pointed in the direction, and said respectfully, Ulquiorra, he left the clan and went in this direction. Chapter 65, just like you discovered the moonlight, and I discovered you without hesitation, Shendu directly flew towards the direction pointed by the triangle black-winged demon. With the power of the chicken charm, his speed has increased a lot again, and it saves time and effort when flying. In just an instant, it disappeared at the end of the black-winged demon group. Boss, where are we going? There was a noisy voice from the black-winged demon group. The triangular black-winged demon slapped the head of the black-winged demon who was asking the question. Idiot! Of course I went to Shuya Palace. Is there anything worth commemorating in this broken place? Under his command and call, the black-winged demon group started a vigorous migration operation. The black shadow that covered the sky and the sun covered the moonlight above the sky and marched in the direction of Shuya Palace. When Shendu found Ulquiorra, he found that the guy was buried in a pile of quartz branches. Quartz tree is the only plant-like existence in Hueco Mundo, and it is distributed in various places in Hueco Mundo, among which the Minos Grande forest is full of such things. But it is essentially a heteromorphic rock, and Ulquiorra was immersed in the piled quartz branches. His whole body was scratched and bruised, and even the mask on his face was torn out with hideous wounds reveal a human appearance. Shendu looked at this guy curiously, and unexpectedly found that even though Ulquiorra had never eaten Minos Grande of the same level, he was still at the Vasto Lord level, completely above his clansmen. Oddly enough, Ulquiorra doesn't have the tyranny, brutality, or even the slightest bit of emotion that Minos Grande should have. The meaning of his existence seems to be to prove the existence of nothingness. Ulquiorra was immersed in the quartz branches, eyes wide open, gazing at the crescent moon above the sky. Until Shendu approached, the burning of the flame burned all the quartz branches. Even part of Ulquiorra's body was burned and blackened. But he didn't mean to resist, but looked at Shendu blankly and asked in a calm voice, "What's the point of nothingness? What is the meaning of existence?" In Ulquiorra now, there wasn't even hostility. He just wants to know the answer to the question. Perhaps this is the meaning of his existence. Shendu looked up at the sky, at the outlined crescent moon, the moonlight cast by it. The meaning of nothingness, I don't know the answer. As for existence, perhaps existence is meaningless. But because it exists, you could discover interesting things. His eyes dropped, meeting Ulquiorra's blank eyes. It's like you discovered the moonlight, and I discovered you. Ulquiorra's eyes became brighter and brighter, and the moonlight in the sky seemed to be reflected in the green eyes. More than once he has thought about nothingness and the meaning of existence. The correct answer was never found. But this time, Ulquiorra found that he might have found the answer. "May I have your name?" Ulquiorra's tone was also calm, as if stating something that had nothing to do with him. "Shendu." Shendu stretched out his hand. "Are you interested in helping me with something?" Ulquiorra seemed to have been waiting for Shendu's invitation, and the moment he stretched out his hand, he shook it. "My pleasure." The process of subduing Ulquiorra is much simpler than Shendu imagined, and his state also made Shendu very curious and surprised. Vasto Lord, and on the edge of Arankar. Because of its peculiar construction, Ulquiorra never ate other Minos Grande all his life, and the pile of quartz twigs just popped up just in time. Even without the presence of quartz branches, Ulquiorra would have Arankar by other means. The 9th step towards the ultimate has been completed. Template progress 50%, 55%. Unlock the rabbit charm. Current abilities: Dragon Body, Fire Magic, Demon Magic, Dragon Charm, pig charm, cow charm, sheep charm, snake charm, monkey charm, chicken charm, rabbit charm. Ryatsu, Superlingwei. With Ulquiorra's allegiance, new spells are unlocked, and the new spell also made Shendu's eyes shine. Compared with other spells, the ability of the rabbit charm is quite outstanding. Super speed teleportation, the owner's speed can exceed the limit, and even travel through time and space under certain circumstances. In this regard, Shendu can also travel through time and space with no spells, but extremely high prerequisites are required. A little carelessness may disrupt the timeline and cause some unpredictable and horrible things to happen. This usage should never be used except as a last resort. There's still Coyote Stark left. Shendu began to think again in his heart. It's strange why no one has found any traces of Nilu. Did she get cut off by that Aizen guy? In the original book, Nilu is Hurley Bell's predecessor and the number 3 in the second batch of Espada. The only way to find her now is to continuously expand the territory of Shuya Palace. As Vasto Lord, Nilu will be discovered no matter how well she hides. As for Coyote Stark, Shendu couldn't help shaking his head when he thought of him as the only Vasto Lord who owns Arankar. Stark's strength can definitely come out on top among Espada. If there is no soul split, it will even be much stronger. In the early days, any weak Hoon who approached him would be shattered by his mighty Ryatsu. Ultimate's loneliness led to Stark's inner loneliness, and thus his own soul was split, becoming 2 different individuals, Stark and Lilinet. This kind of miraculous operation is not alone. Sailaporo had a similar idea in order to study conception notification, but now he is forbidden by Shendu to study that must-have thing, so he doesn't continue to split his soul. Until now, Sailaporo is still the Minos Grande of the city-stored level. Fortunately, this guy's lazy personality won't be too much of a threat. Shendu still knows a little bit about Stark. Continue to accelerate the expansion of the Void Knight Palace. Sooner or later, the rest of Nelu and Stark will be found. He didn't notice at all that there was another Kiando Dama with a very low sense of existence that he subconsciously ignored. Meanwhile, in an underground-based laboratory somewhere in Hueco Mundo, with an octopus head, Minos Grande, like a giant spider, is kneeling on the ground, reporting the recent Hueco Mundo information to the person in front of him. The Void Knight Palace is expanding at a high speed, spreading their control towards the entire Hueco Mundo. Facing his creator, Metastasia was extremely respectful, without any tyrannical emotion that Minos Grande should have. Although some Minos Grande resisted, they were crushed to pieces. And Shendu, the king of Hueco Mundo, also recruited other Vasto Lord, Hurley Bell, Ulquiorra, Sailaporo, Cortez. A couple of Ajuchas are also worth Lord Aizen's attention, Grimjow and Yami. Aizen tilted his head, tasting the sweet and greasy black tea, and there was no hint of impatience in his expression. Master Aizen, this is the information gathered during this period of time. Metastasia buried his head on the ground, and the red tentacles swayed above his head, symbolizing the guy's nervousness at this time. Because I don't get much trust in the Void Knight Palace, so I can only collect these. Stark, do you have a certain understanding of the Void Knight Palace? Aizen asked softly without raising his head. As for Shindu's strength, I can be sure that I will never be weaker than you. But at the same time, it's not easy for him to kill you. On a chair with a backrest not far away, a decadent figure leaned on the back of the chair, looked at the ceiling blankly, and sighed helplessly. Master Aizen, this task is a bit too difficult. I don't think I'll be able to finish. Aizen put down his teacup and responded with a kind smile. This kind of thing, only you can do it. If you let Metastasia go, I'm afraid that before you get close to Shendu, your soul will be completely wiped out by the opponent's Ryatsu. Hearing this, the decadent figure sighed again, stretched out his hands to stroke his slightly curly brown hair, and stood up unsteadily from the chair in front. If I die, also please don't worry too much about Aizen-sama. Aizen nodded, but didn't say anything more, just watched the figure go away. What a hassle! Until walking out of the laboratory, the helpless and decadent voice still echoed and spread into the room. Captain Aizen is really relieved of Stark. A mocking tone came from the shadow of the laboratory. You have no favors for this guy. If he takes refuge in Shendu, then we will lose a lot. Ikamaru Jin walked slowly from there, with a smiling expression as if mocking Aizen. As early as when Metastasia passed back the information about the Void Knight Palace. Aizen picked up the cup full of black tea again, took a sip, and explained calmly. Star's position is subtly changing. He is a lonely person, but he is also a person who extremely rejects loneliness. When you find that there are many of your own kind in a place, how can you restrain your restless heart? Ikamaru Jin nodded thoughtfully, agreeing with what Aizen said. This last order is more like a request. Aizen continued, but he kept a vasto lore by his side who could turn against him at any moment. It's better to let him play the last remaining heat and just explore the bottom of that His Majesty Shendu. I'm curious, what level is Shendu now? Hearing this, Ikamaru Jin was a little surprised. He clearly saw the battle between Aizen and Shendu in this world. That is, before Visor arrived, he had been watching the battle with full attention. The strength displayed by the two of them at that time was truly astonishing. But even so, Aizen still hasn't figured out Shendu's full strength. This cannot help but make people a little surprised and unexpected. Is the strength of this His Majesty Shendu already so strong? Ikamaru Jin couldn't help asking. Aizen raised his eyes and watched Ikamaru Jin calmly. That look made Ikamaru Jin's scalp tingle, and he even began to wonder if he had revealed the secret. Has Shin's been repaired? Aizen did not continue talking about Shendu. Ikamaru Jin's words froze, and then he remembered the fear that Shendu brought to him that day. The Shin's after Shirkai was broken by the opponent forcefully. Until recently, he had Kurat Tsuchimayuri help restore Shin's in the Technical Development Bureau. During this period, the way Kurat Tsuchimayuri looked at him and his expression always made people feel weird. It seems to be ridiculed, and it seems to be amazed. Fixed. Ikamaru Jin calmed down. It will not affect the subsequent battle. But if we face Shendu again, his sudden silence plunged the room into a dead silence. Kneeling Metastasia didn't even dare to raise his head, but he was artificial and had no right to speak here. Perhaps Bankai will be a little better afterward. Ikamaru Jin shook his head, regaining his lion majesty smile. The eyes narrowed slightly, and a touch of pure blue flashed in them. Meanwhile, the present world, Karakura Town. In a certain abandoned warehouse, the faint kid light surrounds the left and right sides of the building, forming a high-level kid enchantment, isolating all perceptions from the outside world. On the open ground, a group of people formed a circle, looking at each other. Among them, Saragaki Hayori wore a white bandage, almost wrapping his head like a mummy. Miguruma Kinsei has a ring around his arm, but it seems that the injury is not so serious. Urahara Kisuk put down his green bucket hat, tapped the cane in his hand, and sat cross-legged among the visors with a relaxed expression. What a violent guy. We don't even know a smidge of information about him. Hirako Shinji's expression was a bit ugly. He was still worried about the fact that his own person was seriously injured by the spike, and reluctantly said, "When we sensed the outbreak of Aizen Ryatsu, we didn't think too much, and we set off immediately. This guy Hayori was a little rude, and then he was picked up by that guy and thrown out directly." Urahara Kisuk said thoughtfully, "This also means that his strength is definitely above the captain level. And judging from the remaining spirit seeds at the scene, the other party is a Vasto Lord." Hirako Shinji looked at him and said seriously, "We need more information. A battle with Aizen is inevitable. Maybe he will be our biggest help. Before that, you must have a sufficient understanding of this terrifying guy." Urahara Kisuk nodded, affirming the statement. Since we want to collect information, we must go to Hueco Mundo. Before he could finish his words, a black cat came out of the shadows, and his hoarse and deep voice rang in everyone's ears. Let's leave this kind of thing to the experts, Wong. Chapter 66. Everyone here is rubbish. The black cat glanced at everyone present with disdainful eyes. Not against anyone. Everyone here is trash. Shihoin Yuruchi, former captain of the 2nd Division, former head of the criminal army, and Shihuin's previous patriarch, was definitely the strongest present in terms of intelligence gathering and assassination. It is definitely the best choice for such intelligence gathering to be entrusted to her. I'll prepare you the newest hidden Ryatsu psychic tool, as well as. Before Urahara Kisuke could finish speaking, Shihoin Yoruichi interrupted him roughly. Just looking for information. Minos Grande will not set up layers of kid barriers like Shinigami. Sneaking into Hueco Mundo or something is a lot easier than going to Soul Society. Shihoin Yoruichi waved his claws, signaling Urahara Kisuke to hurry up and prepare to pass through the gate. When I went to Hueco Mundo last time, wasn't Berrigan in the Void Palace like this? As Shihoin Yoruichi, who has infiltrated various important places of Siriidii and Soul Society many times. In this regard, she has sufficient self-confidence. Of course, this confidence stems from his rich experience and strong hidden ability. Under the urging of Shihoin Yoruichi, Urahara Kisuke waved his hands helplessly and sighed. Yeah, what a wayward guy. Under his operation, a small portal opened in the open space ahead, revealing a dense light curtain. Shiya Palace is a very dangerous place. Before Shihoin Yoruichi left, Hirako Shinji kindly reminded Wan not to fall into the hands of Dashu because of his carelessness. Too much nonsense. I see. Shihoin Yoruichi gave him a disdainful look, then walked Kiki-san into the world-transmitting gate calmly. Trust in Ms. Yoruichi's abilities. Tezai Sakabashi said slowly in a low voice. I think she rescued us back then under the surveillance of room 46. Hearing these words, the worry on the brows of everyone has subsided a lot. Take advantage of this gap. Let's discuss the plan for Aizen. Urahara Kisuke opened the topic again, slapped the fan on the table, and said solemnly, on the 39th round analysis of Kaika Sujetsu, Void Night Palace, in a room somewhere. Shendu was in a fierce battle with Hurley Bell, and the battle was very tragic. However, due to the large gap between Hurley Bell and Shendu, it didn't take long before he lost the battle and collapsed powerlessly to the side. Fortunately, as Vasto Lord, its resilience is quite good. After recovering a little strength, he reluctantly snuggled up to Shendu's side, raised his sore arm, and wiped away the liquid from his mouth. Your Majesty, the expansion of our power is about to enter the final stage. Shendu nodded, thoughtful. There is no trace of Stark yet, and there is a Gushu Aranilo. However, after hearing what Santos said, Yaranilo seems to have been directly torn by Yami. For the two names mentioned by Shendu, Holy Bell also has some understanding. These, including herself, are Minos Grande with special potential. Among them, Yaranilo is the lowest level of Minos Grande, a Jillian who can devour and evolve infinitely. But in Holy Bell's view, Jillian is Jillian. No matter how potential he has, he can't compare to Vasto Lord. Never mind. Shendu stood up, moving his muscles and bones, making crackling noises all over his body, and the perfect body muscle lines appeared in front of him, showing the beauty of Liteste to the utmost. Aranilo is dead. That disgusting guy is not as good as Yami in appearance. Shendu rose up in the forest of Minos Grande and saw countless willful Minos Grande in it, but they were not as good as Aranilo. When the two were analyzing the future development direction of Shuya Palace, suddenly, a strong Ryatsu appeared outside Shuya Palace, covering the whole city. The air is trembling, the sand grains are flying, blending into the strong wind and sweeping beyond the endless sky. Santos scrambled out of his room. His eyes shone slightly and looked towards the direction where Ryatsu was attacking. Two guys, one tall and one short. It seems to be Vasto Lord. Not daring to hesitate for a moment, he was ready to notify Shendu. But at this moment, Shendu had already walked out of the room slowly, stepping up to the sky step by step, and walked straight towards the outside of Shuya Palace. Larger than even Berrigan's Ryatsu, and the lazy smell in the air. Even though he has never met the owner of Ryatsu, Shendu still guessed the identity of the other party. Coyote Stark. Looking at the middle-aged man and the girl in front of him, there was a flash of silence in his red eyes. I can understand that you are declaring war on me. Facing the questioning, Stark was neither humble nor overbearing. With his right hand on his chest, slightly saluted and said respectfully, "Your Majesty Shendu, this is the last order from Lord Aizen. Both I and Master Aizen are very curious about your true strength." Having said that, Shendu already understood what Stark meant. He is ready to betray Aizen, but he wants to finish the last mission Aizen gave him. That is to test out your true strength. What a decisive choice. Shendu opened his arms wide, and scorching flames instantly rose up, surrounding the surroundings. "In that case, your wish will be granted." Stark smiled rarely and nodded, "Then go to fight further away. This is the only city that Hueco Mundo has managed to own." He looked towards the Shuya Palace, not far away, and the depths of his gray-blue eyes were full of longing for the future. As a synonym for loneliness, Stark has hated the word to the extreme. Shendu nodded in agreement, and the next moment it turned into a line of fire and disappeared at the end of the sky. He also didn't want to see the Shuya Palace, which had just entered the peak period of construction, be destroyed because of the battle between the two. This is his place. Stark rubbed Lilinite's head. When facing Shindu's unscrupulous and tyrannical Ryatsu, Lilinette didn't have the usual arrogance at all, and she didn't even have the courage to speak. "Don't worry, I'm here to fight, not you." Lilinette looked up at Stark and rarely taunted him, but asked softly in a worried tone, "We won't die, will we?" Shendu brought her oppression far beyond the enemies she and Stark had ever faced. Even Aizen has never given such a suffocating feeling, like walking on the brink of death. Stark remained silent, but flew towards Shindu's faraway direction with Lilinette. For this question, he is not sure. Although he has heard information about Shendu many times, Stark still doesn't know what kind of existence Shendu is until now. Bloodlust, tyranny, forgiveness. God, it seems that no matter what kind of adjective is placed on him, there is a sense of disobedience. Let's fight first. Stark still has some confidence in his own strength. At least he shouldn't be able to die. Shendu chose an extremely open area. Looking at it at a glance, it is full of endless white sand and boulders scattered from time to time, mixed with a few quartz trees, standing alone amidst the whistling wind. This place is already extremely far away from the Shuya Palace. Even if the battle spreads too violently, it will not affect the Shuya Palace under construction. Stark and Lilinette followed Shindu's Ryatsu belatedly, and after them, several figures descended from the sky to the distance. Sailaporo, Grimjow, Yami, and Ulquiorra, from Minos Grande, to Vasto Lord, and the remaining two are also the best of the Ajuches. Under their threatening gazes, Stark didn't feel the slightest bit of fear, but rather joy and surprise. At least, if you survive, you won't be shrouded in loneliness in the future. Under Shindu's order, Ulquiorra and the others did not intend to get involved in the fight, but stood quietly watching from a distance. "Let's start." Stark twisted his wrist and disappeared in a whirl. Its speed was so fast that it even surprised the four guys watching the battle not far away. "This guy seems to be stronger than we thought." Sailaporo analyzed from the perspective of a scientific researcher, same as His Majesty, independent of Vasto, Lord of Arankar. As soon as these words came out, the surprised eyes of the others became even more astonishing. "Autonomous Arankar, how is it possible?" Yami let out a sound of shock. His rough cheeks moved, and deep wrinkles were squeezed out. As a Minos Grande who has just reached Arankar, Yami understands the difficulty very well. "Don't underestimate the other Minos Grande, idiot," Grimjow said disdainfully. "Since there is an example of His Majesty Shendu, it proves that Minos Grande has the possibility of independent Arankar." After being violently beaten by Shendu a few times, this guy has calmed down a lot and surrendered to Shuya Palace. It's just that when facing Shendu, the body often trembles instinctively, which stems from the fear of death. Was beaten too hard. Until now, these Espadas who surrendered to Shendu have completely completed Arankar. Loyalty has also been raised to a limit. This is one of the main reasons why they come to watch the game. While everyone was arguing, Stark's figure had already appeared in Shindu's side, and the blade pinned to his waist was held in his hands at some point. A ray of cold light blooms under the moonlight. Ding! The sound of gold and iron intertwined stirred in the whistling. Do you want to practice the so-called swordsmanship? Shendu touched his chest with one hand, and the original evil dragon pendant also turned into a slender blade with golden and red interlaced burning lights on it. Although with the strength of his steel skin, these things could be completely ignored, but it is not impossible to use it once in a while. Under the blessing of demonic magic, the spiritual core belonging to Shendu was converted into a golden red blade. There is a smoldering flame on it, and it has a taste of Raijin Jaka. But that pure demonic aura is completely different from it. Sure enough, it's the same as the information. Stark missed a hit and retreated instantly. That expression is still the same as before, showing no interest in anything. His Majesty Shendu is an absolute powerhouse with no shortcomings. Holding the handle of the knife, he pointed at Shendu again. Next, please be careful. The voice did not fall. Stark's figure had already disappeared in place. The speed of its response was so fast that even a few guys watching the battle from a distance had no time to react. Even the sound of the ringing and spinning seems extremely slight. In the whistling wind, it is undetectable. Ding! Knife, the sounds of blade collision staggered, playing a movement near death. The two figures kept flickering on the desert, leaving an afterimage falling in the air from time to time, until the wind and sand came and dissipated in the air. It's just a simple collision of fighting skills. The more Stark hit, the more frightened he became, and even the world-weary expression on his face was gradually replaced by shock. Why is the power on the other side getting stronger and stronger? When the knife went down, the arm went numb. Another cut, and even half of the body felt a sense of loss of strength. How to fight this? Just when Shendu strengthened his power again and fell towards Stark. Stark spun and disappeared instantly. Boom! The violent power erupted and instantly smashed a huge deep hole in the sand below, stirring up dust and sand all over the sky. Looking at the scene in front of him, Stark wiped the cold sweat from his forehead and subconsciously swallowed a mouthful of saliva. In the distance, Lilynette was already dumbfounded. Shendu is not on the same level as the enemies they have experienced. I have never heard of a Minos Grande who can perform so well in terms of pure strength. Hiding what? Shendu is dissatisfied, and this has only just begun to warm up. If I don't hide, I may not be able to continue fighting. Stark grinned. This 4.4 power is a little too scary. Yami looked at the deep pit that was constantly being filled with white sand and nodded approvingly. Until now, he still vividly remembers the scene of confronting Shendu at that time. He exploded with all his strength, but Shendu punched his entire arm. If Shendu didn't think Yami was quite obedient, it wouldn't be just that arm that exploded. Change your fighting style. Stark stood where he was. A dark blue light suddenly flashed in the empty hole in his chest. Before everyone could react, a scorching light burst out instantly, tearing the air and heading straight for Shendu. Fiddle! Boom! Under their surprised eyes, Shendu slapped the Cero, flying with a backhand, and fell into the white sand not far away, blowing up the white sand 100 meters high. Use all your strength. Shendu moved his arms and made a tooth-piercing crunching sound. As the battle progressed, the power belonging to the bull's spell was constantly released. If Stark continued to fight in this posture, he might not be torn to pieces directly by him. It seems that he felt Shendu's undisguised killing intent, and the scorching breath gradually permeated in the air. Stark sensed the dangerous reward and immediately turned to Lilynette's side, placing one hand on her head. Boom! The endless Ryatsu erupted, turned into a dazzling beam of light, shot up into the sky in an instant, tearing apart the clouds piled up in the sky. Like a blue sun, it completely dispelled the surrounding darkness. Stark stared at the figure in the distance and launched a new round of challenges with a deep voice. Go after him, pack of wolves. Chapter 67, Are You Playing With Your Soul? In front of me. No further hesitation. Stark returned the blade immediately. Lily Knight under his palm burst into light and turned into two exquisite muskets held by Stark in his palm. The original pure, white clothing also has fur-like things on the limbs, neck, and behind. Completely different from Hueco Mundo's painting style, appearing in front of everyone. Wow, it's back to the blade. Sailaporo was ecstatic. A truly strong man has appeared. Just this sloppy Ryatsu is enough to drive those puny guys out of their wits. Shendu is quite conniving towards him. With the exception of Hurley Bell, he has literally dissected almost all of the Minos Grande. Even Shendu once cut the flesh and blood to supply him for scientific research. If the guy named Coyote Stark can survive, he must also be able to analyze a wave. Live like this. So much so that Sailaporo's loyalty is getting higher and higher now. Even if Shendu drives him away, he will not leave. Be able to explore science and enjoy life. Isn't this 10 times stronger than the Void Knight Palace before that? Even Aizen can't provide such favorable conditions. On a more serious note, Sailaporo's errand car was assisted by Aizen. When Shendu checked his soul, he found a little problem. Aizen is never at ease even with Tosen Kiname, let alone those Espadas under him. A guy like Sailaporo who can't control it, it's better to have some handles in his hands. At this point, both Shendu and Aizen have maintained the same idea. The difference is that Shendu uses force to deter, while Aizen uses both kindness and force, which is quite different. The fundamental purpose is the same. Zhao. Grimjow snorted disdainfully. We can already see what will happen to this guy. Being beaten up, or he stared at Stark in the distance, killed straight away. 17 Yami nodded in deep agreement. Both of them chose to surrender after being beaten violently. On this point, they maintain a high degree of agreement. On the contrary, Ulquiorra didn't express any opinions, but looked at Shendu in the distance with a blank expression, carefully analyzing the battle. Since he joined Shuya Palace, Shendu has never been seen in battle. Every time there is a conflict, his subordinates will easily resolve it. For Shendu's strength, until now, Ulquiorra had a relatively shallow understanding. Stark didn't pay attention to the Minos Grandes who were watching the battle from a distance, but raised the musket in his hand, and azure blue light bloomed from the muzzle. Your Majesty Shendu, please be more careful. He kindly reminded, the power and cuteness of this attack is much more terrifying than last time. Click. When the words fell, Stark had already pulled the trigger. There was a sudden buzzing sound in the air, and a bright blue light shot out from the muzzle of the gun, approaching Shendu in an instant. Boom! Without raising his eyelids, Shendu slapped it away, and it exploded in the distance, sending dust all over the sky again. This level of Cero, are you scratching your itch? After Stark returns to the blade, its Cero speed is similar to that of other Espadas, but its power has not been reduced in the slightest, and it is even stronger. Facing Cero, who was shot flying again, Stark's expression remained unchanged, as if he had expected it. Cero and Infinite Cero are two different things, Your Majesty Shendu. His eyes were lowered, as if he was counting the white sand on the ground, but his hands were directly raised, and the muzzle of the gun was facing Shendu. Try this. The air was trembling, and countless azure blue Ceros shot towards Shendu like a storm. In just an instant, the entire sky was completely covered. At the first sight, there's only a piece of blue color. The flashing light even made those watching the battle from a distance feel a little uncomfortable. Facing Cero, who was covering the sky and the moon, Shendu had no intention of dodging. I saw him stepping forward, and the raging flames exploded in front of him like huge waves, and the scorching breath instantly permeated the entire battlefield. The blue Cero devoured everything in front of it. Dust, sand, and strong wind, all turned into nothingness and dissipated in Cero. The endless light turned into a torrent of power, trying to crush Shendu as well as its master. However, the flames swept up, and the sound of explosions came out continuously, and the power of the dragon spell was fully integrated into the demonic energy of fire by Shendu. The flames, which were already extremely terrifying, were even more powerful. The collision of flame and Cero erupts in the air. Boom! The deafening explosion resounded over the desert, and the dust in the sky was even more than 1,000 meters high, covering the sky together with the moonlight, making it impossible to see anything. Even the few who watched the battle from a distance suffered from temporary deafness, and it took a long time for them to recover. Looking at the scene in front of him, the corners of Stark's mouth twitched, once again having a clearer understanding of Shendu's strength. Invincible in close combat, seems to be even more invincible in far combat. He started spinning and disappeared in place, rushing into the turbulent dust. The chaotic Lingzi fluctuations covered up his Ryatsu traces, and the flying dust completely engulfed his figure. For a while, Stark actually completely disappeared in front of Shendu. Such poor fighting skills have no effect on me, Shendu said to himself. Since you want it, then you can do it. While speaking, Shendu, who stood motionless on the spot, gradually disappeared into the air, and even the traces of Ryatsu were erased together. Stark exploded into Cero again amidst the flying dust, and the bright blue light pierced through the ashes, but landed in the void. Okay. Aware of the abnormality, Stark spun and rushed out of the dust in the sky, but Shendu was nowhere to be seen. Stark, who has always been calm, is completely. Where are people? He was obviously still fighting with him not long ago, but in the blink of an eye, why is there no shadow? In the distance, Sailaporo and others were even more dumbfounded, because Shendu didn't avoid them, but just disappeared under their noses. It was as if being erased from this world abruptly by a piece of eraser. Until now, they still haven't found any trace of Shendu. In the end, what happened? Stark muttered to himself, trying to figure out what was going on. However, at this moment, a strong sense of crisis suddenly rose in my heart. It's like being stared at by death. He twisted his body subconsciously, trying to avoid the vital point. Boom! The violent power came from the abdomen, accompanied by a scorching high-temperature breath and a burning smell. Under such a huge force, Stark flew up from the spot without any image, turned into a graceful arc, and disappeared straight at the end of sight. And Shindu's figure gradually appeared in situ. Just hit hard. He sighed and said helplessly, "It's fine. What kind of tactics are you playing?" Before Sailaporo and the others could react, Shindu broke out at ultimate speed and moved towards the direction Stark was flying towards. A familiar figure expanded in Stark's line of sight, making his eyes widen, almost unbelievable. What? Monster! There is no hesitation. It should be said that I dare not hesitate. Stark immediately twisted his body in the air, raised his hands, and the muzzle of the musket erupted with blue light again. Countless Ceros devoured Shindu's attacking figure, completely submerging it like a sea tide. But Stark took advantage of this recoil force and took the opportunity to stay away from Shindu's position. But this time the attack still fell into the empty space, blasting countless deep pits and blasting the huge desert empty space into honeycomb briquettes. Stark, who was supposed to be shrouded in heat, felt cold in his heart at this moment. If Shendu is not in front of me, where will he appear? Stark subconsciously exploded Ryatsu and launched a ringing spin at the fastest speed in his life, trying to dodge to a further direction. In a state of returning to the blade, he can only burst out the strongest combat power by keeping a distance from the enemy. Boom! But when his footsteps stepped on the sand, the even more terrifying Ryatsu erupted behind him. The materialized Ryatsu, like a flame, raged and burned in the night, turning into a cloud of flames covering everything, covering the entire sky. Skill, strength, stealth, speed, Ryatsu. Shendu looked at him calmly and said indifferently, "What else do you want to compare?" For guys like Stark, he also has a certain tolerance. At least after surrendering, Stark will do his best to carry out orders to some extent, even if you die in battle. Compared to guys like Neutra and Grimjow, a subordinate like Stark couldn't fault him at all. Stark subconsciously moved away from Shendu with a vigilant look on his face. For him, he didn't even understand the specific situation of this battle. In the past, it was okay to say that he fell into a slump in a melee collision and then directly returned to the blade to explode with full strength. But in the face of Shindu's endless scorching heat, it has no effect at all. After that, the nightmare began. Shendu first completely disappeared in front of him, and then reappeared without warning. In the end, it broke out to surpass the speed of Cero. Stark felt more and more that he didn't seem to be fighting Minos Grande. Shendu is like a bottomless abyss, and everything it shows is even beyond his imagination. About a last-ditch burst left. Stark was no longer as lazy as before, but said seriously with a serious look, "Your Majesty Shendu, please be careful." Until now, he still has not forgotten his original intention. I saw its arms spread out in the distance, and the blue Ryatsu was like a band of lightning, circling up, down, left, and right. With the complete unfolding of Stark Ryatsu, a series of blue materialized Ryatsu separated from his body, jumped to the sides, turned into a ferocious wolf, and stared ferociously at Shendu, adhering to the final will, "I will not hold back." Until this time, Stark still did not forget to remind Shendu. He lowered his arms, and the wolf turned into a light beam and went straight to Shendu. Face this attack. Strangely, Shendu didn't even launch a defense, but let the wolf bite on his limbs. Well, the smell of the soul. 980, he understands the essence of Stark's move. As one of the few Vasto lords who can split themselves, Stark can split his soul and turn him into a wolf to attack the enemy. These wolves are both Stark and Lilynette. Just when Stark was about to let the wolves burst into their final glory, something even weirder happened. The pack of wolves, which were supposed to burst out with infinite light and destruction, let go of their jaws biting on Shendu's limbs and stood obediently aside. Like a husky in a world of ice and snow, they loll their tongues and look cute. In the end, at this moment, Stark's heart was hopeless. What happened? These are clearly his soul fragments, but they are completely out of his control at critical moments. Not to mention attacking Shendu. They are lucky if they don't attack themselves. "I surrender." Stark raised his hands in a very bare manner, directly lifted the returning edge state, and completely restrained his own Ryatsu, showing no sign of fighting at all. "I tried my best in this battle." He knew very well that if Shendu hadn't kept his hand, he would have died tragically in the battle just now. If you don't give in, it's a bit too ignorant. Now, he looked at Shendu seriously, more precisely at his feet. Those husky-like vicious wolves. "Your Majesty Shendu, can you tell me what happened to these guys?" Shendu pressed with his right hand, directly condensing the pack of wolves into a ball and taking control of them. Of course, it's the power of the soul. The soul power of the sheep charm far exceeds Stark in terms of control. Splitting one's own soul, making it a bomb-like attack method, in Shendu's eyes, is simply extremely crude. Whether it's Shinigami or Minos Grande or Quincy, the soul is fundamental. This kind of suicide attack is absolutely not advisable. Even with the power of the sheep charm, Shendu would not choose such a stupid way. "Before you join us, I have a small condition." Shendu casually threw the soul ball to Stark. "It is forbidden to use the attack method of soul splitting again. This is absolutely forbidden by Shuya Palace." Holding the soul ball, Stark's soul power was recharged and restored to its original state. Even Lilynette on the side regained her composure and stood timidly behind Stark, tugging at the corner of his clothes tightly. Facing this first order, Stark put his hands in front of him and saluted respectfully. "As you order, Your Majesty Shendu." Chapter 68. The noble horse can repel all external forces. The 10th step toward the ultimate has been completed. Template progress 55% to 60%. Unlock the horse charm. Current abilities: Dragon Body, Fire Magic, Demon Magic, Dragon Charm, Pig Charm, Cow Charm, Sheep Charm, Snake Charm, Monkey Charm, Chicken Charm, Rabbit Charm, Horse Charm. 1 Ryatsu, Super Lingwei. Coyote Stark surrender not only strengthened the power of Shuya Palace, but also allowed Shendu to unlock a new spell. The noble horse can drive out all external forces in the body. At the moment when the horse charm was unlocked, Shendu's body also experienced some strange changes. When he devoured other Minos Grandes in Hueco Mundo in the early years, the somewhat hidden wounds left behind were all erased under the power of the horse charm. His body is straight up to its peak level. Ryatsu souls, and even a few groups of the power of the horse charm, is far more terrifying than Shendu imagined. It can not only heal injuries, but also be immune to those debuffs. Similar to Kaika Suigetsu's complete hypnosis ability, it is completely useless for the current Shendu. Not only that, all the abilities belonging to debuff are completely immune to Shendu. Things like Hirako Shinji's Reverse, Star-Crossed Knight's Lethality D, Fear F, and even Team Zero's Ichibai Haisub. These abilities of them have been completely invalidated to Shendu. Absolutely heaven-defying horse charm. Not only that, but even his own combat power rose again with the removal of the dark wounds. Shendu is extremely satisfied with this. With the horse charm, there will be a certain amount of capital. After completely dominating Hueco Mundo, a new round of expansion can begin. Use this world as a springboard to cover the rule of the Void Palace to the Soul Society. In the distance, Sailaporo and others saw this battle as a whole, but because of this, an instinctive fear arose in their hearts. Not to mention the invincible strength, speed, and Ryatsu, but its strange concealment ability alone is enough to make all Shendu's enemies terrified. The figure disappears, Ryatsu disappears, and even the attack cannot be sensed. Only by relying on his own premonition of death can he react reluctantly. But with Shendu's speed in a real life-and-death battle, it is absolutely impossible to react. Only death is optional. Yami shivered and subconsciously embraced his burly body with both hands. He recalled the battle that day, the completely crushed posture, and the fear engraved deep in his mind. Grimjow's face was also extremely ugly. The number of times he was beaten by Shendu is definitely the one with the most Minos Grande present. From this point of view, it seemed that Shendu still had something to do when he was beating him. Damn it, Grimjow cursed in a low voice, not knowing whether he was cursing himself for being weak or Shendu for being a monster. Farther away, there's a shimmering light hidden in the air, and as the wind blows, it distorts and changes its shape. 3 figures hide in the bent light, wearing black cloaks, covering their own Ryatsu. Yeah. An exaggerated voice came from under the black cloak, without any intention of concealing it. What a pure fighting machine. A guy of this level, I'm afraid I would have been hanged and beaten if I hadn't been on the team with Captain Tosin. Tosin Kiname on the side closed his eyes and focused, not expressing any opinion at all. In fact, from Shindu's performance just now, anyone who is not blind can see the gap between the two sides. No, he seems to be blind, worthy of being the new king of Hueco Mundo. Even Aizen couldn't help sighing. Compared to the last time I met Shendu, he seems a bit stronger. I can't see any shortcomings in any aspect. More importantly, Kaika Suigetsu is no secret to him. It's really tricky. Although he said so, Aizen's tone was calm, as if he couldn't hear the slightest bit of embarrassment. Master Aizen, do you want to terminate our plan first? After a long silence, Tosin Kiname finally spoke his first words. Termination? Aizen chuckled. Shendu will not interfere with our plan. He has jumped out of the chessboard now and has become the person who executes the chess. But who can guarantee that the environment Shendu is in now is not another chess game? He looked up at the crooked moon of Hueco Mundo. On the lens, the moonlight was reflecting a thorough image. With stark surrender, Shendu's Espada plan is gradually approaching perfection. Although Berrigan, Neutra, Zamari, and Yaranilo have all died. But Cortez and Santos can be added as new Espada, and then one of those Ajuchas with strong strength can be selected. And the structure of Espada is basically completed. A guy like Ludbin can definitely become the third of 1,000 blades. Its creator-like returning ability is enough to easily create an army of skeletons. Although the combat effectiveness is lower, it is still bluffing. Unlike Aizen, Shendu does not arrange Espada according to killing ability. He's completely freewheeling. Whoever is pleasing to the eye will be included in the team of 10 knives. Right now, there's only one Vasto Lord left, Neliel II Odell Schwank. At the same time, on the edge of Hueco Mundo, a slender figure stepped lightly on the white sand. The proud figure is wrapped in snow-white down, with a huge antelope-like mask on the head, and the two big curve horns give people a strong sense of deterrence. The white bones, like armor, are distributed to protect the position of its joints. This figure is exactly the Nilou Shendu was looking for. However, what is different from the impression is that she is not half human, half goat, but human-like. As Vasto Lord, his true state is very close to that of a human, except that half-human sheep are more suitable for fighting. She has been hiding on the fringes of the Hueco Mundo for a long time. Because of her innocent and kind personality, Nilou hates meaningless battles so much that when she encounters the Minos Grande from the Void Palace, she always subconsciously avoids their marching route. In this way, unnecessary conflicts and battles are avoided. This is why Nilou has not been found by Shendu for so long. But now, the fight seemed inevitable. A certain girl wearing a neck ring mask and combing long hair in a ponytail has discovered Nelu's remaining Ryatsu in the desert. For this reason, Nilou launched the speed skill again and used it to spin, trying to get rid of the other party's tracking. But the scary thing is, the speed of this Arrancar girl is no less than hers. She is even tireless, and her endurance is so good that it frightens her. As a result, Nilou had no choice but to change her direction, heading towards the depths of Hueco Mundo. The two figures, one in front and one behind, flew straight towards the direction of the Shuya Palace, and dust and sand swirled from time to time on the deserted fields. "Hey, you can't escape." Cortez let out a hideous laugh, looking strange. It's just that this kind of expression looks quite weird on her beautiful face. "Let's fight. This is what we should enjoy." In the Palace of Void Knight, sitting on the throne of bones, Shendu picked up the strong wine that Kuratsuchi Mayuri sent from Soul Society and drank it in one gulp. As the king of Hueco Mundo, he is not as boring as Berrigan, just a salty fish with no ambition. Now that you have that condition, why not make your life better? Seeing that the wine glass bottomed out, Sun on one side carefully filled it up again. Hurley Bell's three subordinate officials, among them Sun and Apache, who had slightly better personalities, were kept by Shindu's side as maids. As for Mira, she followed Cortez and was in charge of the expansion plan of Void Knight Palace. Regarding this, neither Holy Bell nor the three of them had any opinion. It's just that occasionally when Mira came back from abroad, she would quarrel with Apache, and it seemed that this was their way of exchanging feelings. Shindu looked down with a serious expression and analyzed, "Although you haven't fought before, you should know something in your heart from the previous battles. This guy, Stark, is undoubtedly the strongest among you. Below, Stark, Ulcora, Grimjow, Yami, and Santos stood upright. Among them, Santos has the most fanatical expression, looking like a fanatic. He was able to get to where he is today, all thanks to Shindu's gift, which also makes his loyalty directly full. Even if Shendu told him to die at this time, Santos would not hesitate at all. As for the other four, although they are not as loyal as Santos, they are trustworthy in terms of their character. At the very least, there will be no betrayal. In this regard, Shendu has sufficient confidence. As for that guy, Sailaporo, he is still analyzing a set of data sent by Kuratsuchi Mayuri in the laboratory at this moment, and he may not be able to leave the room for 10 days and a half months. His soul is controlled by Shendu, not to worry about loyalty. When hearing Shindu's words, Grimjow was a little dissatisfied, but when he thought of Stark's performance in the previous battle, he could only suppress his dissatisfaction in his heart. Ryatsu, with his back at the blade alone, is not something he can resist, not to mention the bug-like Cero attack. Among the Minos Grande present, perhaps Shendu is not the only one who can easily defend and dodge. If you change one, you will be turned into trash by Cero. Divided in the order of Espada, Stark comes first, Shendu said in an undeniable tone. After that, there will be the second blade Hurley Bell and the four-blade Ulquiorra. Five-bladed Cortez, six-bladed Grimjow, seven-bladed Sailaporo, eight-bladed Yami, een-bladed Rudbon, and finally Santos. When hearing this ranking, Grimjow chose a rare silence. As a guy who likes to fight and enjoys fighting, with Shindu's permission, he has continuously launched challenges in the Void Knight Palace. Sadly, he couldn't beat any of the guys ahead of him. Even Sailaporo often used some weird methods, which made him fall into the trap and couldn't break free. Only Yami can defeat him by virtue of his speed, but it is extremely difficult to kill Yami. This also dealt an unprecedented blow to the confidence of Grimjow, who considered himself the strongest in Hueco Mundo. Your Majesty, the third Espada. Sun discovered the blind spot. Is there any other Kiando that didn't join the Shuya Palace? Shendu nodded and didn't explain much. He also thought about this ranking for a long time. Among the Ajuchas Arankar, there are many who are more powerful than Santos, but he still chooses Santos as the 10th blade. In addition to its loyalty, its functionality is not comparable to other Minos Grande. For example, finding the trace of Nilu this time all depends on Santos' pervert-like perception ability. As for Lutherben, one of his ghosts is a whole army, which can be used as the first line of defense to guard the Night Palace. This is also Aizen's choice. However, due to its killing level, Aizen never put it in the team of Kiando. Shendu fulfilled his wish, directly filling up Ludben's loyalty in an instant and approaching Santos. As the existence that helped them evolve Arankar, in the hearts of many Arankar Minos Grande, Shendu is already a godlike existence. When adding Arankar, it was originally with the help of Shendu's power. This also leads to their instinctive closeness and admiration. And just as Shendu was planning the future, a black shadow crouched silently at the top of the palace, covering his petite figure with the shadows around him, reducing the sense of existence to the minimum. Lo, but when the black shadow didn't notice, Santos' eyes, like mosquito coils, nuage owls, glanced upward from time to time. From the Ryatsu emanating from their unconscious alone, one can definitely judge their Vasto Lord rank. At least, the top 4 in this Espada are Vasto Lord. Shihoin Yoruchi muttered in his heart. His yellow vertical pupils were full of unconcealable shock. This force is already powerful enough to make you tired quickly. His Majesty Shendu at the top should be the one who fought Aizen back then. Although Shihoin Yoruchi didn't see the battle between Shendu and Aizen because of returning to Soul Society at that time. However, the relevant characteristics of Shendu in Urahara Kisuk and other populations are still remembered. As hot as the sun, Ryatsu, who escaped unintentionally, is unbearable even for elite players. And the long flowing white hair and the handsome face that is not human. Besides, there are many Arankars in the Empty Night Palace. Shihoin Yoruchi went through all the information in his heart. Among the middle and lower powers, even 10 guard teams combined are not as large as the Void Knight Palace. Besides, the construction of the Shuya Palace is gradually becoming perfect. Even in terms of Shihoin's aesthetics, it is still the best construction. Suppressing this shock, the black cat-like figure was hidden even deeper. She must send this information back to the present world. Otherwise, if an accident occurs, it is very likely to lead to the complete defeat of the household and the present world. That would be a doomsday scenario. All right, the corners of Shindu's mouth raised slightly. He put down the wine glass he was playing with and said slowly, "Next, it's time to welcome our guest today." Suddenly, the atmosphere in the palace suddenly became strange. When Shihoin Yoruchi heard this, his heart skipped a beat, and the fur all over his body exploded. She was found. Chapter 69, just right. I like a cat pet Ulquiorra and Grimjow didn't realize what they meant. But I also saw Santos looking towards the top pillar of the palace. For a time, several eyes fell on it one after another. In the shadows, there seemed to be nothing. "Miss Yoruchi," Shendu said loudly, "do you think you can hide yourself from everyone?" The magnetic magic sound echoed in the palace, forming a slight echo, trembling above Shihoin Yoruchi's heart. Now even the identity has been directly identified. Even if Shihoin Yoruchi wanted to hide, it would be impossible. In the eyes of surprise, a black cat that is completely different from Hueco Mundo's painting style slowly stepped out of the shadows. The golden vertical pupils were full of alarm and shock. Until now, she still has enough confidence in her concealment skills. Even if the opponent is Vasto Lord, it is impossible to find or trace. Shihoin houses hidden skills. Shendu praised, sure enough, it is unique in the Soul Society. The reason why he was able to discover the existence of Shihoin Yoruchi was entirely because of the soul power of the sheep charm. Although the current palace is vast in scope, it is quite empty. But if Shendu can't even discover that there's a brand new soul among them, then he might as well wipe his neck earlier and report to hell. What about the game with Aizen, the war with the Soul Society, and the establishment of the Dragon Dynasty? As for Santos, it is entirely because of his unique ability. When Arankar, he did not choose to strengthen from steel skin, high-speed regeneration, and other abilities, but chose perception ability. The original brown eyes also turned into a mosquito coil after completing Arankarization. Its outrageous detection and perception ability has been multiplied several times. If Shendu is not counted, Santos's detection and perception ability is definitely the strongest in this palace. But corresponding to it, Santos' combat effectiveness is low, even barely equal to that of Ajucha's without Arankar. In Espada's team, it is already considered the most open one, but any slight movement cannot be concealed from its perception. He is the only one who really discovered the traces of Shihoin Yoruchi. So what about being unique? Shihoin Yoruchi curled his lips. Didn't you find out? Tell me, how will I die? She could see it when she was discovered. She already had the heart to die. In fact, as a member of the second team, 343 already had the determination to die at any time when he joined the second team. The position of the second team in the Soul Society often involves the dark side of it. Whether it's about the assassination among the nobles or the intelligence gathering between each other, the second division cannot be avoided. However, when one is discovered doing this kind of thing, the end will often be very miserable. The annual casualties of the second division are maintained at a very high number. Sometimes, even more than the 11th team fighting on the front line. Shendu shook his head. His crimson eyes met Shihoin Yoruchi's. This kind of thing is too unpleasant. Since you sent it to your door yourself, then stay with me completely. When he heard this, Shihoin Yoruchi suddenly had an ominous premonition in his heart. The cat hair all over his body exploded, and he subconsciously wanted to escape from the place. But Shindu's reaction was a little faster than hers. The moment he tried to dodge, he stretched out a finger and pointed at Shihoin Yoruchi from a distance. Lightning-like golden light shot out from the fingertips, just covering Shihoin Yoruchi completely. Shihoin Yoruchi, who was about to face death, didn't feel any pain, not even the slightest change. This, not only her, but even Ulquiorra and the others were stunned, not understanding what happened. Only Shendu looked at his masterpiece with satisfaction and lingered on Shihoin Yoruchi with admiring eyes. Okay, Miss Yoruchi. Shendu didn't hide it from her. I guess you still don't know what happened. But I can tell you, since you like the form of the black cat so much, I'll fix it for you. Now you're already a pure black cat. The power of the monkey spell. Shendu anchored Shihoin Yoruchi in his current form, and of course consumed a fair amount of Ryatsu. But this is nothing to Shendu, who has a dragon spell. Ryatsu is just that. It fills up in no time. Shihoin Yoruchi's cat eyes widened instantly, full of disbelief. She subconsciously wanted to return to her original appearance. However, when he realized that there were some espadas not far away, Shihoin Yoruchi thought about it and chose to hide in the shadows that they couldn't see. For its behavior, Shendu has absolutely no intention of stopping it. Soon, the black cat jumped out of the shadows again and landed directly in front of Shendu, looking at him angrily. You what the hell did what? At this moment, her voice has already changed, from the rough and low male voice to the slightly arrogant Yujia's voice. This means that Shihoin Yoruchi has changed from the black cat form to the human form. But due to the power of the monkey charm, she still maintains her current black cat form and cannot recover at all. Just a little demonic power. Shendu kept smiling. A trace of satisfaction flashed across his eyes. The effect of the monkey charm can still be effective even for captain-level existences. The only thing to note is that the current Shihoin Yoruchi has changed from the previous harmless black cat to Flash Goddess Yoruchi. The monkey charm will not weaken the opponent's strength in any way. This is also the main reason why Shendu is rarely used in battle. What he can beat is useless, and even if he can't beat it, it will only make the opponent's anger explode directly. Shendu doesn't think it's a good thing to fight a monkey or a groundhog or something. That would be a nightmare. Imagine a flaming gelada baboon backhanding out Raijin Jaka, a mass funeral of 1,000,000,000,000 dead. This picture is so beautiful. Shendu said it was a bit hot-eyed. However, if this ability is used on Shihoin Yoruchi, there will be no violation at all. She often appears in the form of a black cat. Even if she is completely transformed into a black cat, she will not feel uncomfortable at all. Damn God. Shihoin Yoruchi obviously wasn't going to catch him without a fight, so he raised his cat's claws and grabbed at Shendu's position. There was a tearing sound in the air. The power of this claw is definitely no less than the full blow of other captains. Shihoin Yoruchi, who is good at white hits, has never relied on the power of Zampakit and has taken a place among many captains with his bare hands. Boom! The contact between the cat's paw and the palm made a clanging and powerful sound, as if sharp weapons were intertwined. Boom! White air exploded from the black cat's shoulders, and the instant coaxing state was activated. The power on its cat's claws increased sharply, and even the air collapsed visible to the naked eye. The shrinkage of the body means the growth of destructive power. Shihoin Yoruchi twisted his back, urging his ultimate strength. The cat hair all over the body exploded directly, like a large black hedgehog. At the same time, the majestic Ryatsu also permeated the palace, which immediately made Santos, who was the weakest in combat, a little uncomfortable. This cat, Santos grinned, isn't Ryatsu too strong? Captain in Shinigami, as the one with the most BHDB knowledge, Stark explained, I didn't expect to attract a captain-level Shinigami, which is really surprising. Santos was the worst among them, and the remaining few guys were eager to try when they saw Shihoin Yoruchi's amazing fighting power. If it wasn't for Shendu fighting with him, they would have been unable to hold back their restlessness. Captain Shinigami has never met an opponent. Instant coax. Feeling the power coming from the palm of his hand, Shendu made a backhand grip to completely control it. Even with the blessing of Kid's strength, Shihoin Yoruchi's strength is far behind his. The two are not on the same level at all. The cow charm and the dragon body have already allowed Shendu to stand at an undefeated height in the field of strength. Nice technique, but it's not enough. Feeling the terrifying power on the cat's paw, Shihoin Yoruchi's expression changed slightly, and he finally had a clearer understanding of Shendu's combat power. However, this is just the beginning. The crackling thunder and lightning traveled on the cat's hair, and Ryatsu, who was already strong, also surged again. This change made Grimjow look surprised. Until now, the black cat that leaped vertically on the high platform was really taken seriously by him. The powerful Ryatsu shown by Shihoin Yoruchi is no weaker than any of them. Advanced technique of instantaneous coaxing. Shendu's expression remained unchanged, and his strength continued to increase, allowing the crackling thunder and lightning to act on his skin. Although the strength of his steel skin is not comparable to the level of strength, it is not something that can be broken by a little aftermath. Lightning strike, accompanied by the roaring sound, the tender drinking sound burst out from the cat's claws. The turbulent Ryatsu turned into the power of thunder at this moment, bombarding the minister in Shendu's palm unreservedly. Where one person and one cat came into contact, a dazzling golden thunder burst out immediately, dispelling the darkness of the entire palace. Burning pain appeared in the palm after a long absence. However, Shendu did not let go of the cat's paw and continued to bear her full output. He wanted to use this to test the power of the horse charm. Burnt black spread all over Shendu's palm, and the originally fair skin suddenly became inhuman. However, the moment the thunder light dissipated, the large area of scorched black immediately recovered at a speed visible to the naked eye like ice and snow melting. But in the blink of an eye, it returned to its original appearance. High-speed regeneration. Stark whispered to himself, It seems that His Majesty has hidden a lot of facts in the previous battles. As the being who has fought Shendu for the longest time, he thought he had already figured out the general strength of Shendu. But unexpectedly, what Shendu showed was just the tip of the iceberg. Shihoin Yoruichi was even more devastated by this scene. A full blow not only did not cause any serious injury to the opponent, even a little skin trauma recovered in the blink of an eye. How to fight this? Can't beat it. There is no possibility at all. Once the slack thoughts appear, it is like a dam bursting, and it is out of control. Shihoin Yoruichi released the instant coaxing form, fell to the side, and leaned directly on the armrest of the throne. There is no arrogance before the slightest bit. I can't fight, and I can't fight. I can't run, and I can't run away. Shihoin Yoruichi directly entered into a bad state. It's up to you whether to kill or cut. Fighting, killing, and so on don't fit my personality, Shendu said with a serious face, completely ignoring the white eyes of some guys below. There is nothing missing in the Shuya Palace now. The only thing missing is a black cat pet. Shihoin Yoruichi's cat face had changed, and he immediately turned over and stood up, protesting with fur. Since you delivered it to your door, it's up to you. How is this possible? As the former head of the Shihoin family, the captain of the 2nd Division, and the head of the criminal army, Shihoin Yoruichi is so proud of his heart. If it wasn't for saving old friends, how could he have fallen into the present world? She tried her best to resist Shendu, but under its power suppression, everything was futile. As Flash Goddess Yoruichi, who is good at white hits Shuimpa, when facing Shendu, he was completely suppressed in all aspects. Speed. Are you better than the Injustice Charm? Strength. Are you better than the Bull Charm? Even if Yoruichi played all his cards, it was still not enough for Shendu. The combat effectiveness of the two is no longer at the same level. Ever since, Shihoin Yoruichi could only watch as Shendu held her in his arms, bending the cat's fur that had exploded. Although the temper is grumpy, but the touch is still very good. Shendu praised, "From today on, you are my exclusive pet." Even though Shihoin Yoruichi tried his best to resist and tried his best, there was still no sign of breaking free. Under Shendu's terrifying power, even if she turns on the forms of Shunku, Thunder God Beast, and Shenlong Black Cat Warrior, it will be of no avail. The gap is too big, desperately large. Shihoin Yoruichi gradually calmed down, thinking about another countermeasure. Since he is not dead, it means there is still a chance. This guy Shendu can't stare at him 24 hours a day as long as he relaxes a little. He can directly escape from the Void Knight Palace and Hueco Mundo. As for the shape of the Black Cat, it doesn't matter. The big deal is to ask Urahara Kisuke for help and Kuratsuchi Mayuri from the 12th Division. Shihoin Yoruichi made up his mind and planned to temporarily stabilize Shendu with an obedient appearance, so as to find an opportunity. In other words, this way of touching cats is really good. Wait, she suddenly widened her golden vertical pupils. That's not the place to touch a cat. Mr. Meow. Chapter 70 Antelope delivered to your door. I am willing to fight to protect you. Forcibly pressing Shihoin Yoruichi, who was about to rebel, Shendu used his strength to suppress him in a high position until he was exhausted and had no more strength to toss. The black cat was lying on Shendu's lap with its tongue hanging out of its mouth, its eyes blank, looking like it had been spoiled. There is no chance of turning over at all. This guy's strength seems to have no upper limit. There's no strength at all, let's talk about it. With just one hand, she was firmly pressed in place, unable to break free at all. Shihoin Yoruichi gave up completely. Even if Shendu took his hands off her back, he was still lying there weakly, without any intention of moving. Give it up, Shendu comforted. I really can't think of any other means for you. For Shihoin Yoruichi's level, no one present knows better than him. Because Zampicut is not as powerful as white hits, Shihoin Yoruichi abandoned Zampicut and specialized in white hits technique, thus fighting with high-end advanced techniques such as instant chatter. In essence, this kind of skill is nothing more than the limit of speed and strength. But in these two fields, Shendu is truly the strongest, even invincible. He did not bind Shihoin Yoruichi with a contract. Compared with Kuratsuchi Mayuri, who pursues the truth, Shihoin Yoruichi is not afraid of death, let alone succumbing to death. Perhaps other means can be used. Shendu stroked the soft cat fur, recalling the related demonic magic, and there was a faint light in the blood-red pupils. And at this moment, Cortez's undisguised Ryatsu directly covered the vicinity of the Void Knight Palace. Along with it, there is another unfamiliar Ryatsu that is not weak. This is Vasto Lord. It seems a little familiar. Stark and the others had mixed reactions. For Vasto Lord, who suddenly appeared near the Void Palace, Grimjow seems to be preparing for a big fight. But Shendu stopped stroking the cat, raised the corners of his mouth slightly, and announced slowly, "The last Espada has arrived." For a moment, everyone was surprised and surrounded by emotion. Co-author, when you planned the Espada members, did you not obtain the other party's consent? Could it be that this is another scene where the Overlord is going to fight hard? Several of them were forcibly detained as members of Espada, and because they recalled their unbearable past, they showed expressions of sorrow. Yami and Grimjow are the worst. Shendu grabbed the black cat Yuruchi with one hand and disappeared in place in an instant. After unlocking the rabbit charm, the speed at which it casts the ring has also increased a lot. Compared with footwork techniques, such as Shuinpa and flying sickle kick, the ring spin is definitely far superior in speed, because Shuinpa uses his own spiritual power to achieve the effect of high-speed displacement, while Flying Sai uses the external spirit to achieve the effect of high-speed movement, and it is more inclined to control the spirit. Requirements of the external environment. Only ringing is a short-distance teleportation in the true sense. It is the basic skill to open the black cavity, and it belongs to the space ability. It will also be higher. The power of the rabbit charm, in addition to improving Shendu's pure speed. The speed of casting the ring is also faster, and as it continues to deepen, the proficiency will also increase. Until now, when he performed the spin, it only caused the surrounding air to vibrate slightly. Its movement is even smaller than that of Shuinpa, so much so that when Shendu appeared on the battlefield outside the Shuya Palace, the Espadas were still in a daze in the palace, unable to recover for a while. "This speed," Santos said loudly in an adoring tone, "you really deserve to be His Majesty Shendu." Grimjow gave this guy a look of disdain and said in a cold voice, "Licking a dog will kill you." Then it also disappeared into the palace with a ringing sound. After Ulquiorra, Yami, Stark, and others looked at each other, they also rushed to the battlefield outside the Void Knight Palace. The flying white sand trampled up, the crimson and interlaced Cero light, and the clanging sound of gold and iron colliding. Because of Cortez's pressing step by step, Honilu had no choice but to start a fight with him. But this is also the beginning of her regret. As Vasto Lord, even if Nilu was stronger, she still couldn't take down Cortez in a short time. Regardless of fighting skills or fighting will, even if Cortez is placed in Espada, he is one of the best. Haha, this is the battle Minos Grande should have. Cortez erupted with violent power, stirring up the rising white sand amidst the trampling of the war. Try this. I saw an incandescent light emerge from her swan-like long neck, and countless spiritual particles gathered nearby, and the condensed power even distorted the space around it. This guy, when Shendu saw this scene, he couldn't help feeling helpless. Once you are on top, you don't care about the surrounding environment. Wang Su's flash. The jagged light shone brightly, forming a ball of light, suspended in front of Cortez's collar mask. The super powerful Cero released with Espada's blood, as the medium is several times more powerful than ordinary Cero, and its power is enough to distort the space inside Hueco Mundo, and even affect the Void Knight Palace not far away. Shendu once warned Cortez that he would never allow Wang Su's flash to be released near the Shuya Palace. Obviously, once this guy gets to the top, he won't remember any instructions at all, and he only wants to win the battle. Nilu looked at the scorching incandescent light not far away. Her expression became more serious. Just the Ryatsu that it dissipates gives people a sense of suffocation, which is enough to show the astonishing power. She quietly gathers her own Ryatsu and prepares to use her unique ability to return this Cero back unchanged. Cero reprises. A special ability unique to Nilu. Haha, the big one is coming. With an excited expression, Cortez used Wang Su's flashes with all his strength, pouring almost all the Ryatsu into it. Boom! The incandescent light instantly boiled the entire area, and the surging white sand swept towards the sides, making an ear-splitting roar like a huge wave. In the middle, the berserk light beam penetrated everything in an instant, devouring everything with terrifying power, and approached the direction where Nilu was. Seeing the power of this Cero, Nilu slightly widened her taupe pupils, unable to hide her shock. Cero Ensemble has an absorption cap. This time, Cero's power has already exceeded the upper limit of her ability, and it is impossible to accept it, let alone return it. If he was hit head-on by this attack, at least he would end up seriously injured. Just as she was gritting her teeth and preparing to hit head-on with Cero, a figure suddenly appeared, occupying all her sights. With Nilu's kind heart, she could not see this kind of thing happening at all. Subconsciously, she was preparing to protect it behind her. However, Wang Su's flash is approaching. Boom! The violent impact formed a mushroom cloud covering the sky, covering everything in sight in an instant. Shendu stood at the same spot without moving at all. The white sand around him was completely emptied at this moment, and the nearby area also continued to crack, forming a ravine of pride. The friction between energy and air creates a high temperature, and the water vapor in it evaporates in the air. The thick, anxious breath is constantly permeating. When Wang Cero approached, he held the black cat Yuruchi in his left hand and stretched out his right hand forward. With the strength of its own steel skin, it was firmly fixed in place. But only the impact caused by the aftermath still formed a mushroom cloud that soared to the sky, and its power was extremely astonishing. The black cat Yuruchi curled up in Shindu's arms, and at the moment when Wang Su's flash was approaching, the golden cat's pupils shrank to the size of a pinprick. She seemed to smell the breath of death. At this moment, only Shindu's arms can bring a warm feeling. So much so that she subconsciously curled up towards it. But the next scene completely broke Yuruchi, the black cat's cognition. Shindu just stood there, forcibly holding Wang Su's flash in his palm. Behind him, Nilu's eyes widened again, and a faint mist appeared in her gray-brown pupils. Just now, she thought someone would die because of her. Fortunately, things didn't develop towards that scene. The incandescent light in Shindu's hand became brighter and brighter, and the Ryatsu contained in it became more terrifying. Until, with a wave of his hand, he threw it to the end of his sight, far away.
No more novels? Take part in the voting. The most requested novels and those with the most likes will be chosen for publication on euroaudiobooks.com. There, I can upload as much as I want without the risk of receiving a strike. Our 18 novels and other content that exceed what is morally acceptable are only published on Patreon or the free novels page. Remember, the site is funded by donations on Ko-fi and Patreon memberships.